What is up, guys? It is time for the tip-off, time for this 3-hour block of Awesemo content to bring you everything you need to know for today's NBA slate. A 6-gamer on deck for us today, and I'm Chris Spags, filling in for the lovely and talented Kayla Knierim. Unfortunately, all my blonde wigs were out of stock, so you got to deal with this ugly mug for the next hour. But the good news, I do have 2 qualified analysts here with me today. The man you've seen across all of our new March Madness content, March Madness Live Before Lock, also the PGA. He is busy. He's also got some moon cats in his life, apparently. He's Ben Rasa. How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, sadly, all of that is true. Every single thing that you said, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but I am good. It is tournament time, little time for NBA as well, so I'm very excited to jump back in with you boys.
And also joining me today, a man who's really one of the best fellows on this channel. You're going to see a lot more of on the deeper dives, on the live before locks, and on the tip-off, as well as the Slate Starter podcast alongside our pal Rin Pack. He's Eric Lindquist. How you doing, Eric?
Got all the nerves out with Ben the other day. We got to do the Tuesday PGA show together, which was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, Matt Jones decided to go completely scuba diving on it today, and a lot of my lower arm plays that I do have are not playing fantastically well. So fighting an uphill battle in PGA, but excited to be talking NBA. Excited to dig into this slate.
You're already looking like a newsy NBA slate today, guys, so smash that like button immediately. You're going to need the likes today without the chat simping for Kayla all day long, as she does the great job she normally does on these shows hosting things. So help me out, either be very weird about my looks in chat or hit the like button now, whichever you prefer. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We have hours of content. Literally, it's now about 15 hours a day of content on the channel for the PGA, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, MMA, everything you want to see in your sports world. We have content for it on this YouTube channel, as well as at awesemo.com. So make sure you are subscribed and hitting the notification bell. And of course, we would not be doing a tip-off show if it weren't for our sponsor, No House Advantage. It takes a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. It's exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform, levels the playing field. It makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can win for free today and join for free. Really get the deposit bonus if you sign up at nohouseadvantage.com or download the No House Advantage app and use the promo code Awesemo, because if you are a new sign up, they will match your $20 deposit instantly. So go over to nohouseadvantage.com or download No House Advantage in the App Store, and we'll talk more about some of the top props today on No House Advantage coming up in a little bit. But first off, here we have a couple degenerate gamblers alongside myself on this show, so we couldn't start a tip off without talking about the bad beats. And Ben, last night's slate had the usual mix of good chalk, bad chalk, landmines all over the place. So how did it work out for you?
So yeah, it was a pretty uneventful Wednesday in my life because I didn't have a lot of college basketball. So I did dabble into some NBA betting, and I will say that I bet the Rockets last night. Didn't really watch the game, was reviewing the box score. They missed 19 free throws. So I don't know exactly what's going on. Houston's got enough problems. That was a little tilting, I'm not going to lie. And that is certainly my bad beat from last night.
Well, if you listened to the tip-off last night, we were on the other side of that one, Chris and I were. So it was nice to be on the high side of variance there, getting the 14-point deficit, the cover there on 12.5. That ended up being pretty nice there. Some of these double-digit games have been very advantageous, especially on the Jazz side, who are just massive against the spread this year. I like going to that side. And then also the Nets money line came through for me as well. Once that line flipped and they became underdogs, I got on the Nets side, and James Harden just did James Harden things. So I broke even at DFS, which felt like a win after the beginning of my week. And then to hit on both bets ended up being a pretty decent night.
Yeah, and for me last night, I mentioned to Eric and Ben before the show that in part really because of all the success some of our guys have had over at Fanduel, I decided to take the plunge. I've had a mediocre run on Draftkings over the last week or so, decided I was going to plunk my money over at Fanduel, maxed out the $3.33 tournament, doing the same thing today because got a 50% ROI on that. So I'm feeling good. And if you hear me talk more about Fanduel, it's not because they're holding me hostage. It is in fact because just getting better results on there. And I want to give a quick shout out to this show yesterday. Eric mentioned that we did mention the Rockets as one of our bad dogs for the day. And I guess the missed free throws probably helped that one out a bit. But the good dog that we had on the show yesterday mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers. And just want to point it out just really as a reflection on the nature of DFS and us as hosts, you guys watching the show and participating in chat. And somebody was like, I swear these guys give out bad tips on purpose. The Cavs keeping up with the Celtics. You know who won a money line bet? I mean, not me, I didn't place it, but you know who won a money line bet? The goddamn Cleveland Cavaliers yesterday, beating the Celtics at home. That's the kind of genius you occasionally get amidst all the crumbs of misdirections we throw at you guys to put you on high own plays. But
I honestly love that stuff so much though, because it's like, how much time do we have in the day? Like, how much time do you have in the day to mislead people? I don't know. I like being helpful. I like, and also when it comes to sports betting specifically, like we're all in it together here. So if we can end up on the same side together, it's a good day all around.
Shout out our girl Leslie, my chicken chat too. One of the people you've probably seen on the channel before doing some of the fantasy football content earlier in the season, who's also now helping us out behind the scenes doing some business development stuff for our fine sponsors like No House Advantage. And she's been getting better results on Fanduel too. So just one thing I know we talked about on the Late Slate show with EMAC recently, but you are having a little bit of a lull, or you're just trying to do something different to make the best of your process every day. Switching up sites can be a move. Playing on No House Advantage could be a move. Playing on Super Draft could be a move. Just try some different things out there, because that is sometimes what can help get you out of a funk. One thing that could also help you get out of a funk is the key news on today's slate. And the Knicks today going to be without Elfrid Payton and Emmanuel Quickley tonight, who's been a very popular play recently to middling results, I guess, or good to middling results. And today, Eric, there's going to be no guards in for the Knicks. I guess we'll have Frank Ntilikina in there as a value play, minimum salary, or just about everywhere you're going to find. How are you feeling about this Knicks team, and who benefits the most versus Orlando?
So I get to write my Slate Starter article every single night. Comes out that night. You can read it. It's still relevant into the morning. One of the things that's always risky is that sometimes when I like a game, I might look like an idiot the next day. It was very strange because I knew this total was going to open closer to 200 than just about any game we've had for a while. 206.5. It's the lowest on this slate by almost 20 points. And I'm kind of just in love with both sides of this game, depending on how a lot of this Orlando news breaks down. Alec Burks feels like as secure as it can really get on this slate. The one tough thing that's going to exist on DraftKings is 4 of the top 6 highest owned plays are all at the small forward position. So you don't really have that many spots to go to. Plus, small forward is generally not some place you like to go too much, but 4 of the 6 is a pretty large number. So figuring out what to do with those 4 on this slate is going to be a very important thing. But Alec Burks above the rest for me in a lot of ways, just because of his ability to score, his ability to handle the ball the way that they're going to need him to in this spot. Plus, you're looking at a low usage guy in Frank Ntilikina, who's basically a 0.64 DraftKings points per minute guy on the season this year. That just doesn't intrigue me too much. I know it's a 3K play. Those are always intriguing, but at 18.8% that we have him for right now, I just like the fact that I know kind of what to do with this side of the ball. Play Julius Randle, play Alec Burks, you sprinkle in some RJ Barrett, and then the rest is just kind of a stay away for me.
Ben, how are you feeling about the Knicks here? And I agree with most of Eric's takes, but I think maybe a little more nuance involved with guys like Frank the Tank. So who do you think benefits for the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, they're so thin. Even though when you look at all these games, it's by far the lowest total, almost 20 points clear of any other game. There's still a lot to have, and that's just the value that comes out when you're missing 4 guys in the backcourt. Now, when you look at Frank Ntilikina hasn't scored a basket since March 4th. That'll be hopefully changing tonight.
Is that good?
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the move, but of course the minutes are going to be there. Burks, I'll echo those thoughts. More than secure. Everything will be there. The volume will be there. The usage will be there. And then you've got, certainly Barrett I could make a case for, but even though this game has a low total, it's clear value and certainly salary relief on a 6-game slate where we may not have a ton of that depending on what unfolds.
And on the Magic side of that game, we got Michael Carter-Williams expected out, while Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, and Terrence Ross are all questionable. I'll go to Ben first here. How do you handle it if these guys end up as game time decisions? Because we have seen in the past shorthanded Magic squads open up a lot of opportunity for guys you might not normally like. But with these guys up in the air and the game starting a half hour after lock, Ben, it could get a little dicey.
Yeah, this is a little trickier than the Knicks situation. And again, I mean, the game environment is what it is. Vooch is going to be there and he's going to do his thing. He's been taking massive volume north of 10K again, but he is their whole offense. And then you go to the other side of the spectrum, someone like Jason Randall, more salary relief. We'll have to see. I mean, there's more questions than answers with the Magic right now. I think you will have the opportunity certainly to kind of stay away if it's pretty murky, and that you're going to always have that option if you have the money to pay up for Vooch. But it's a tough situation. I don't have a ton of clarity, and I'm not sure, honestly, even if we see kind of a scattershot of who's in and who's out, it's not going to move the needle a ton for me.
It's going to move it. It's going to move it for me on Fanduel because Terrence Ross is still 5,900 over there. Chesson Randall's near the minute 3,600. Vooch is 10K. You play him at a center position. I feel like you would probably project out as your best center by a little bit there over on Fanduel, actually by quite a bit if both of those guys end up sitting. And then Evan Fournier, we've seen the kind of big game potential that he has even coming off of some of these injuries. So I would be interested in taking some shots on Ross or Fournier or the combination of the two should they end up in. Obviously not a great game environment. That's your big knock there, but the opportunity should be there, specifically Terrence Ross, who when he has to play point guard, when he basically has some of these point guard duties, has actually been more serviceable than I expected him to be this season in that slot. So with Michael Carter-Williams out, depending on what the Fournier news, the Gordon news, everything else that's still yet to break with this team, there is the potential for quite a few plays, more than you would expect out of a game with this total for sure.
Yeah, and I would think, too, in this game situation, I know Eric is always an advocate of late swapping. We only have one early game today at 7 p.m. East Coast time, the Utah-Washington game. So hopefully you'll have enough spots around to do a swaptimizer run if we do get that news after lock. And, of course, make sure to watch the live before lock show because they will probably have that news as early as anybody out there, thanks to our friend, the news god, bringing everything to us here, both on the Awesemo NBA Twitter handle as well as the premium Slack and the YouTube chat. Another news item here, Mike Conley is going to be out for the Jazz tonight's first game of the night at Washington that we just talked about. And Eric, I'll go back to you here. Do you trust a chalky Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, the latter of whom actually takes a bit of a hit in rates in the court time without Conley, which is an interesting thing, could be an aberration, but could be something to keep in mind?
Yeah, I got a lot to talk about with the Jazz here. But first, I don't even know who you are anymore. Talking about FanDuel, talking about late swap. I mean, this is a brand new Spags over here today. I enjoy this. But anyway, so one of the crazy things about digging into this situation is how the rates don't necessarily change. And in fact, for two guys, it kind of changes in the inverse. So Donovan Mitchell, right off the bat, I know he's not part of the question, but I'm going to bring him up anyway because he is a talking point of the slate. 1.21 DraftKings points on the season. Only goes up to 1.22 with Mike Conley off the floor. However, you do see a couple minutes extended run. Same thing with Clarkson. Goes from a 1.12 down to a 1.06 with Conley off the floor. Actually loses a little bit of that production, but again, minutes go up. Joe Ingles, I expected him to kind of be the guy who really popped in this spot. 0.91 DraftKings points per minute on the year. Actually 0.93 with Mike Conley off the floor. Not that much difference, and only an assist rate that goes up 0.5%. So I was kind of expecting to see a larger jump for these guys. Obviously, the big question is going to be what you project those minutes to be because their rates are actually pretty similar going down the line with Conley off the floor this year, which was very surprising to me in a lot of ways. But I think that speaks a little bit to how well this Jazz team plays together. They're a little bit more incongruence. They share the ball well already, minus Jordan Clarkson, who's a black hole. We know that. He only has like a 13% assist rate, I believe. But for the most part, these guys share the ball well already. So yeah, they get a little extra minutes, but like from a per minute basis, like I'm not seeing such a gigantic spike there. I don't want to say that I would be light on them because if I were playing cash, I would absolutely be going their direction. They stick out like a sore thumb in this matchup in a game with a 235 plus total. But for the most part in tournaments, I think there's a path where I might be a little bit lighter on them depending on what site. DraftKings, it might be hard where you're rostering 8 guys and you get that multi-positional flexibility on guys like Ingles, Clarkson, who you can play at point guard and shooting guard. But on FanDuel, I'm kind of planning a route where I'm going to be lighter on them than the field.
I mean, it's my boys, all of them getting more ownership. Again, that's a product of a 6-game slate. So these guys are going to be popular. And it's, as Eric kind of talked about, I think maybe the perception is, Conley sits, wow, what a game changer for these other Jazz options. And yeah, it'll solidify the minutes. And it is a really good spot in general. They're a double-digit favorite here, even being on the road. But maybe in terms of the situation, it doesn't train drastically in terms of the fantasy production. Now, Clarkson, we know that the usage is going to be there. This guy's going to take double-digit shots. He could take double-digit threes. That's going to give you some implied upside. And again, against Washington, I don't mind it, but I am kind of neutral on it. It's one of those situations, you see where your lineups end up. If you have a price point that's going to fit one of these guys, all three of them, whether it be Mitchell, Ingles, or Clarkson, I have absolutely no problem putting them in there. But would I start and try to build around them? Probably not, to be honest.
Yeah, Ingles, I think I agree with what Eric was saying too about the rate data for Ingles that just really hasn't taken as much of a jump. And I think part of that is that Ingles has kind of kept his involvement in the offense for the most part with Conley being back. Whereas in the early parts of the year, he was definitely deferring a lot more to Conley. In this recent run, he's kind of kept the same opportunity for himself. So Ingles in play, but definitely could be a bit overowned. And I don't know where I'm going to land with my sorting process today, but I do think Ingles to me jumps out as a play that you can move away from and probably find a similarly projected play, whether it be a little bit more expensive or not. And that'll make you different right away. Another game we got today, Atlanta. Clint Capella's questionable again after him and Onyeka Okongwu's absences led John Collins to a rare competent game last time out. Ben, how are you going to handle this one with John Collins looking fantastic, but the fact that we don't know for sure whether Clint Capella is going to be in or out?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we saw what happened when Capella sat. He was very impressive against Houston, double-double, 20 and 10, blocks all over the place. Certainly the minutes are there. If we get that situation again, it's hard not to like it. I think the price tag is more than reasonable, but it does feel pretty binary. You mentioned this is a product of personnel, as so many of these situations are, whether we're talking about the Knicks backcourt or the Hawks front court here. So want to see the news for sure, but if we get that news and it breaks right, you got to like Collins again.
Yeah, agreed. And his price bump, only $700 over on Fanduel, $600 on DK. That is not enough to factor in this change of these changes in his rebound rate, all the production that kind of goes through him in this spot should Capella continue to be out. I completely agree there. Somebody that I would have a lot of. The one guy who was sneaky, again, maybe it was just a little too thin on an 8-game slate, or just considering every single piece of value went off two nights ago. But Nathan Knight does play the backup 5 there. Just letting it be known that he's still sitting down there, like right around the min. He's 30. What is he? Yeah, he's not even listed here on the moment. I believe he was like right around the min again. He was 3,500 the other night. I believe he went up to like 3,600. But somebody to just like randomly sprinkle into. We're looking for savings, looking for paths to get different on a 6-game slate. He might be one way to do that.
Yeah, Nathan Knight, 3,500 on DK, and was the bane of my existence because I didn't have him set in my player pool correctly because I didn't think he was going to be viable. But definitely a guy who can pull some minutes away from both Gallo and John Collins in this spot if we do have Clint Capella out. But going to be very important here, and I just want to make sure to mention Gallo because I think really he or Collins are going to be the ones who have the outlier efforts if Capella ends up out. And that was what came true last game, except that both guys got there. So for me, it might be an either-or spot in my groups on Fantasy Cruncher today. Another game we got here for the Lakers, Anthony Davis and Marc Gasol have been out for a while now, but Alex Caruso's recent absence has meant big upside for fan favorite Talen Horton-Tucker. I saw people in the chat already talking about him earlier. And I think the question today, Eric, is going to be, is he a priority play? Because Caruso is back now, and Horton-Tucker has seen more minutes and also more assist upside because of Caruso having those concussion syndromes recently.
This is going to be kind of a big thing that I'm going to be factoring in for the next couple hours as we get closer to lock. Again, I talked about the fact that we have 4 of the top 6 owned plays that are going to be at the small forward position on this slate. We have Alex Burks, who I obviously talked about how much I liked him. Joe Ingles has small forward eligibility. RJ Barrett sitting there at 6,400, garnering 25% of ownership. And then Talen Horton-Tucker is the lowest owned minutely at 25.2%. He's the cheapest of the group at 3,900, but he's also got by far the lowest minutes floor. And I don't think it's relatively close compared to those other guys. So do I like him as a play? Yeah, because you get those savings, you get an ability to play a guy who I think does see a little bit of this increased run, but we've seen back-to-back games that have kind of blown out, and he's really kind of outkicked his coverage for where I would project him to be playing minutes-wise in a close game. So right now, I've been lighter on him in the morning, just kind of as I'm going through a couple of like my preliminary builds and putting in minutes, but there's obvious upside. I think he has by far the widest range of outcomes amongst those 4. And so just because of that right now, I'm kind of, I'm going on the lighter side.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I think the one interesting thing about a 6-game slate here is the opportunity cost, particularly at small forward. And you have incremental values. It's not like, you're going to be paying all the way up, or you can punt completely with Horton-Tucker. You have guys in that mid-range with Ingles, with Burks. So you have some options. I totally agree. Range of outcomes is wide. That's a good thing, particularly with tournaments. But you're really not going to be funneled. Now, the ownership seems somewhat dispersed. And again, that's probably a good thing if you want to go to Horton-Tucker. But when we're talking about major priorities, not to kind of punt the question, but I think he's in a pool with a lot of other guys who make sense, but you really don't have to force any of them in.
I wanted to piggyback 1 second on that. The other thing too is that at 3,900, there aren't a lot of pivots to make to other guys in that situation. If you're trying to late swap, you're kind of stuck on Talen Horton. Like you can go to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but we kind of know that upside is going to be capped. He's at 3,800 on DraftKings. You can go down to some of those other ancillary Pelicans pieces in a faster up-tempo game, but I'm not really secure on those minutes either. So like, really, you're locking in a roster spot that there's nothing to do with if he's the only piece you have remaining. I would need to have multiple pieces and multiple avenues if I'm building multiple lineups to be able to get off of him should my lineups not be doing well, because you're going to have a long period of time to be able to react to it. Part of late swap and its importance isn't just making sure that you can like get over to react to injury news. It's being able to react to how your lineups are doing. So if I'm having great lineups, yeah, I can eat the Talen Horton Tucker chalk and be fine in a lot of ways, but like I need avenues to be able to get off of him at his price point. There's not a lot of people below him that I'm enamored to go to.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. And this is sort of the DFS situation that we do talk about a lot on this show, where you have another guy coming in who materially changes the equation for Horton Tucker, who, team watched the tape here, but watching the games for the Lakers the last couple of days have been Horton Tucker basically initiating every play when he's on the court. It's not going to happen with Caruso. Even if he ends up initiating half the plays because of Caruso being out there, that's a big drop off in Horton Tucker's opportunity. So to me, I think he could be a bit of a trap play today, just with more bodies getting back in that Lakers rotation. Speaking of, another body back in the Thunder's rotation with Al Horford. And this is going to be a situation that could cramp Moses Brown style after he went off as probably one of the best chalk value plays of the year last time out against the Bulls. Ben, I'm going to ask you, do you like Moses or any of the Thunder tonight with Big Al back in the rotation for a revenge game against Atlanta if people want to file that away too?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you add another big in there, it does confuse the situation, but we just got a super chat on this exact question, so we appreciate that. There is a 2K price difference between them, and I do think they're still viable on this slate, but I think what we're really talking about is just the unknown of how does that rotation change? Is the upside cap? Now, certainly when you look at Moses at that price point, he still has some ceiling implied there, but is the 10X still there? I'm not sure about that. Obviously, Horford, a little more secure. I'd probably say a lower range of outcomes. So price point wise, pretty even, but you do have to monitor the situation considering certainly not the same with Horford back in there.
I don't like Moses Brown on this slate. I love him. I think he's probably one of my favorite tournament plays to go to in this spot. This has something that doesn't necessarily show up in the data, and that's just kind of a changing of what they're trying to do with this roster. I think having 2 rest days for Horford, maybe they do, maybe I'm completely wrong, and they do try to give him a game to go show off. I also don't think it's out of the question that they could play Moses Brown alongside Al Horford. We haven't really seen Moses Brown play like at all up to this point. He was obviously phenomenal. I had good vibes from just, basically being near lock button numbers of him the other night, just like a lot of other people did, but he's right now over on the Boom Bust tool, by far our largest leverage score. Boom 37.2% of the time. Ownership's right now coming in right around 18%. He's in the optimal 30% of the time right now on Alex's data. That's a gigantic number. Like, you don't see many numbers like that come through. I was already high on him this morning. When I saw that, it really kind of popped off the page. I think there's more minutes upside than what is going to be factored in. Obviously, I don't know what that ownership's going to get to, so we sort of lock, but I really, really love getting as much of him as possible today.
Yeah, Moses Brown, for whatever it's worth, the last time that Horford played, they did start Moses Brown alongside Al Horford in the second half, and then he played, I think, about 4 minutes before they went back to Roby. So it could be something that Brown is just going to get that second unit run, which is always a great thing for a guy like Brown, who's a rebound monster and also can actually soak up a good amount of usage. But I think too, his minutes could be more secure than we realize. I don't know. There's a lot of ways it could go with Moses Brown, but I agree, as a value play, he's still in the mix, even though I'm not going to quite lock button as much as last time. And again, as Ben mentioned, shout out to that super chat too. Tough to take super chats on this show, guys, but one more here from Mike Verderosa, and we appreciate them all, but we have a sort of more rigid schedule on this show. A shout out to Kayla as well in the chat, who's flying back home for some personal business. So be nice to Kayla, because really the main thing I would say to everybody here, always be nice to everybody on the channel, but especially nice to Kayla. But Mike's asking about Kareem Manet, who is a player we did not mention as part of the Magic equation earlier. Is he somebody that is even relevant? I don't think so. I feel like Chase and Randall's really the dumpster dive play that I think the most relevant there.
Yeah, I would agree. The simple fact is that you're only accruing $400 more, so you're implying so much more risk, so much more unknown, when you can probably just take the prudent play in Randall if you're looking to punt with a Magic guard.
Also, what are you looking at for like a minutes upside there? I know he's at the min on both sides, but like he hasn't played really anything extended. He signed a 2-way contract. We'll see kind of what it ends up being, but I couldn't see him possibly playing more than 10, 12 minutes. You know, you have Chesson Randle, and then you're going to have Terrence Ross play a lot of point guard if he's able to go. So obviously monitor that news. Like, I would say you would maybe have a 14-minute cap that I would probably kind of be looking at right now for if you had the news break your way and had Terrence Ross and him out. That's just not enough on this slate for me to make him viable.
And if you see a guy not getting minutes in Awesemo's projections, which of course you can always get for yourself at awesemo.com/join. If you're not currently a premium member, there's usually a good reason for that. It's not like Alex or the other guys, Steve Buzzard, Sean Zahn, who help out with the projections too. Like, those guys are winning tens of thousands of dollars and wagering tens of thousands of dollars on a given day. So that is something for them where they are, trust me, they are putting in every bit of due diligence to make sure that Kareem Mané will be playing if he is playing. So watch that one. And then if you see these guys ruled out for the Magic, if Gordon, if Fournier, if Ross somehow don't make it in, then maybe Mané gets minutes, or maybe he's not even available today. There's still all those different protocols for guys moving between other two-way deals and whatever. Let's get to the next segment here, one-on-one. And guys, smash that like button now here. We appreciate it a bunch. We got this tip-off iteration that we haven't tested out before on the air right now, before you guys get the deeper dive and live before lock. So help us out. Hit that like button now as we get to the one-on-one, where the question, as always, in these battles between stars, which player would you want to have the most in NBA DFS or prop betting? And the first one up, Trae Young and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, two players with massive upsides who end up being complete hit or misses as to whether they get there or not. Eric, I'm going to ask you first. Tonight, they're going head-to-head. So who do you want more in the one-on-one, Trae or Shai?
I think I'm going to have to go Trae Young. So obviously they play different positions over on FanDuel. I think just kind of where Trae Young's falling at 8,800. I do like getting into a lot of them there. We have a lot of options. Like, if you do want to go the Utah route, you can go that direction on FanDuel as well. I expect Clarkson to be very, very popular there as well. So a little bit more pertinent to DraftKings, I think. I'm still going to side with Trae Young there. Gets to take over a little bit more of that offense. We're seeing the assist rate start to go up here. If Capella's in, I think that actually does help his profile a little bit more. But part of it for Shai is that he's only eclipsed 52 fantasy points, I believe it is, on DraftKings once in his last 10. That's just not getting it done at 9K. We're seeing that price kind of elevate up there. They're not really pushing his minutes. I'm going to be off of him today.
Yeah, I'll agree. The simple fact, these players are pretty close, but to me, the price difference is not enough, where Trae Young, I think, has both the ceiling and the floor. When you're looking at it, they are playing each other, as you mentioned, Spags. And then just looking at this, Hawks at home, 7.5 point favorite, 224 total. I'll go with Trae Young. Simple one for me.
Yeah, I think Shai, really the issue is that having Horford back in is something that's not been the best for his usage rate. And the last time out for Shai, we saw him starting to defer a little more to some guys who aren't Al Horford. And I don't think that bodes the best for today. So I would also go Trae Young's way if I had my choice. Next one-on-one up, we got Nikola Vucevic, who's got an unknown number of Magic teammates who'll be available tonight, while Julius Randle will lead an undermanned Knicks squad. Both guys are near their season high prices. So who do you want more in this one-on-one, Ben, Vooch or Randle?
So, normally when I looked at it, and I've been respecting the Knicks defense all year, I was thinking Randle, but Vooch has dealt with this all year. This is not a new situation for Orlando. They've had so many games where it's been him and an unknown amount of players. He's taking massive volume. Certainly, I do think that the Knicks can particularly limit him. Not that he takes a ton of threes, but I don't think that's going to be a big output. I still think he can do damage inside. And then on the other side, the Knicks are missing a ton of guys. So I think a lot of that will fall to Randle. And it's just a simple fact. I'm going to stick with Vooch, though, just because of the ability for him to kind of handle these situations. There's been a number of games I expected Orlando to get their doors blown off. They have hung in. The minutes have been there for Vooch. I think we see that tonight, even against the Knicks defense.
I'm right there with you. I think I'm surprised that you were kind of on the same side as me here.
So am I, honestly.
I was going to say that was you are sharp, sir. I like doing shows with you. Just agree with the things that I think. That's great. Julius Randle, obviously coming in much higher owned, 26.2% on DraftKings. Nikola Vucevic down at 7.2%. You're obviously paying $100 more to get to him. You're locking up a center spot. But think about it this way too. We know Vooch isn't the best defender on planet Earth. Nerlens Noel is on the other side, which is basically like him getting a breather every time he's down on the offensive end or on the defensive end for Vooch. He has far less work that he's going to have to do as opposed to Julius Randle, who might have to be doing some work on Vooch going through. Like, oh my gosh, like sign me up for as much Vooch as you possibly can on this slate, especially if you get that Ross and Fournier news to break for them going out. This 7-point spread isn't going to scare me away in any way, shape, or form. I'll take my shots on a much lower owned Vooch, especially on FanDuel, where I think you can just get some massive leverage going to that number and just kind of jamming him at a spot that outside of like Moses Brown, I'm just not super enthusiastic to play many other guys.
I'm surprised I'm alone on this one, but I would go Randall by a pretty wide margin. I actually have him projected for more fantasy points right now. And that is assuming that Fournier, Ross, and Gordon are in. And this equation is going to change a lot if those guys are out, because what these guys just mentioned, Vooch having to do more. But I think that's where Randall is right now, where you don't have Quickly, who's about a 30% usage rate guy. You don't have Rose, who's another 30% usage rate guy. Those guys out of the mix. Elfrid Payton still takes a lot of possessions away. I think Randall's a really high quality play today. And I think he's, to me, a priority play where I don't know that I'm going to lock him, but he's going to pop up a lot of my lineups. And I'm very much a believer in Randall, but I think really the ideal situation in this game for me is if Fournier and Ross are out and you could put both Randall and Vooch in a lineup. I think that lineup's got a lot of ceiling to it just because there's so many guys missing then for both sides. But
yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. Like for me, like Randall is a great play. I'm not saying that he's not, but is he going to outproduce him 3 times, 3-to-1, like at a 3-to-1 ratio right now, which is what the ownership is reflecting on DraftKings? I'm going to say no, especially if, again, you get that news to break your direction. I think also we got to talk about the positionality of him. So on FanDuel, you're getting to play a center spot. Cat's going to project out well. Gobert's in a great spot, we know, against Washington. Capella, if he goes, is going to be viable. Vooch just makes such a contrarian pay-up option, and I think he's in a better spot than he's probably getting credit for just because of the total of this game. And obviously there's a bunch of news that's hanging around it. Julius Randle also has Zion for $800 cheaper. John Collins, who's going to pop off the page if Capella doesn't go. A couple of these other cheaper options, Pokashevsky can still take shots on. There's a couple guys down here. Dario Saric is at 38 on FanDuel. Jay Crowder's at 3,800. There's other paths that I can go power forward that aren't necessarily there that give me just a contrarian build on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Certainly the ownership point, I think, is a good one that sometimes we forget, where if a guy is going to be projected for 3x more ownership, as Eric mentioned, that could just mean that you're expecting him to get there 3 times more. And I think that is, with these 2 star players and guys who can have gigantic roles for their teams, they might be right ownership wise. And definitely a part of why you check ownership throughout the day with the ownership projections we have at Awesemo.com. Our last one-on-one, we've got Zion Williamson, who played more lead ball handler last game. And this is something I've actually talked about a lot recently, but Kira Lewis played under 10 minutes in that one, or it really was doing nothing out there. So I think that's a noteworthy change for the rotation potentially here, where we got more Nickeil Alexander, more Zion handling the playmaking duties. I think that bodes well for him. And he had 8 assists in that game as he had one of his better days fantasy-wise. On the other side, this is a match, but the same game, Damian Lillard was expected to get squeezed by CJ McCollum in his return last game, but he ended up putting up one of his best fantasy days of the year. So I forgot who I went to last. So Eric, I'm going to go back to you first here. Who do you want tonight? Zion or Damian Lillard, accounting for the fact they're completely different positions and different salary points?
I'm happy to talk. I'm always happy to talk here. That's great. God forbid. Damian Lillard killed me the other night because I just didn't have enough of him. I didn't have him in any of my good lineups that were going at that late night hammer. I just factored in CJ McCollum maybe a little bit too much. He came in 28% usage right off the bat for the season, and he had 28% usage, CJ McCollum, that is, in that game right out of the gate. Part of two nights ago is that there was basically unlimited salary that you had to work with. Like, you had Moses Brown, you had some of these other super cheap options that I don't think were as fragile as what some of those options down there at the bottom end. If you're playing Randall or Frank Ntilikina or some of these other guys, they're not going to pop nearly as much as like a Moses Brown from 2 nights ago. So I'm going to go the Zion route. Purely because I do trust what we're seeing from him. I believe he's going to be near a 10K number when this season ends. I want to get in on it early here. CJ McCollum, as his minutes and his usage go up, as he kind of, I guess, maintains that usage around that 28% season-long number, I'm expecting Zion to be somebody that would project a lot closer to him than you would expect. Obviously, Damian Lillard put up 50 actual points. I don't need to tell you that he doesn't have a ceiling, but considering he came off of a gigantic game here, I'm just going to be lighter. We've seen a price increase on DraftKings to 11K. That's just going to be harder for me to get to today.
So it's difficult because I just look at Lillard in the situation with the Pelicans. They play absolutely no defense. This is a competitive game at home. The Pelicans specifically allow 39% from 3. It's up to 42% when they're on the road, which is kind of a noisy stat, but still, there is nobody that I think more of than Dame when he gets a team that really can't defend the 3-point line. He takes upwards of 10, 12 a game when he gets going. That can really rack up. Now, you're talking about different positions and different price tags. So it's a simple fact. If you're really paying down, and particularly at point guard, there's so many guys we talked about that are dirt cheap. Lillard is the complete opposite of that. You're paying the premium at the position. That does kind of give a different feel for the lineup. So I do think Lillard is primed for another monster game here, and it's just a product of the Pelican situation.
I think the one thing that jumped out to me watching some of that game last time out was that Lillard was still primarily the point guard. He obviously scored a lot there, but McCollum was mostly playing the Kyrie Irving second man setup role, which was not the case for McCollum earlier before his injury. Maybe that's just because of him having to get up to speed, having to get back, whatever fitness levels that he needs to get to. So that could change, but I do think if it continues where Lillard is actually playing functionally the point guard and McCollum more the two guard, that is a different situation than earlier in the year where these guys' rates were pretty comparable before the run of McCollum being out. So I think it's just something to watch there and maybe a reason to take a buy-in on both Zion and Lillard more tonight because their situations, I think, have materially changed, especially if Zion doesn't get a lot of Kira Lewis minutes tonight. We got one plug here, and then we got to get to the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day, which is the money maker of all money makers on the show, undefeated Ben Rasa. I'm going to hype this up as much as possible now. But the plug that we got to give for you guys is for the Awesemo Podcast Network, where if you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo shows on YouTube, almost all of our Awesemo shows go to our podcast network. So go to awesemo.com/podcast. Check out the latest. And if you leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle or email address, you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So all the people who missed out on that Shamrock code and 50% off, you could win a free one by leaving a podcast review on any of our Awesemo podcasts. So go to awesemo.com/podcast and check that out now. But it is that glorious time for our own Dr. Ben Ross's prop bet of the day with his Goldberg-like win streak that my estimation, Ben, I'm putting you at 6-0. And I'm going to give you a chance here to tell the people that I guess this is a good run, or if you're just an expert, they can never fade.
Oh yeah, that's it. Certainly that. Listen, I will say oddshopper.awesemo.com. This is absolutely true. Really does help with these things because what I'm doing is I'm going there and I'm picking my spots, but I'm also getting assistance from Alex's ROI tracker, from all the different books. I'm picking the best line available and it's making the difference. There's been a couple games during this streak that if I got a bad number, I would have lost. We're going to put that on the line here. I'm going to a formula Spags that we've done a couple times and it's worked out. I'm going to these 3-pointers made. It's not the most popular prop, but it can be profitable. And specifically this one, again, it's not a guy you think of, RJ Barrett. His 3-point prop is 1.5, which is pretty reasonable, but I'm going under. You can get it at -128. So you're paying a little juice, but again, nothing crazy. And this is just a simple fact that this is a guy that's not a 3-point shooter, really. Even all these guards being out, I don't see that changing. In 8 of the last 10 games, he's taken 3 or less attempts from 3. So now we're talking about if we get that type of volume, he's got to shoot a ridiculous clip. We go to Orlando. They're not the best defense. It's not like the Knicks, who were first in the league, but they're not the worst either. 36.5% 3-point defense. That's right in the middle of the pack. They've been better lately. And I just look at this game. The Knicks are a slight favorite. I think it's done inside. You guys have talked about Randall already, the guards. I don't think Barrett will have the volume. Certainly he can make a couple. We always know that with a toss-up prop, but I'm really banking that we see again another pedestrian line, 2, 3, 4 attempts. I'm saying he doesn't shoot 50% from 3. That's what it's going to take in my mind. I'm leaning under here. We're going to try to make it 7-0. We'll see what we can do, Spags.
Also, Ben, I forgot to do the whole intro that I normally make Kayla do, so I'm just going to do it now because
I was so when we got the run sheet and I didn't know Kayla wasn't going to be here, I was interested to see how you were going to handle it. Were we going to go fully off the rails or were you going to deviate it to make sense? So I'm very relieved. This is what happened, chat. We averted disaster. Thank God.
So here's the intro I was going to give to Ben anyway. Ben, you've spent years in your medical school residency learning the exact prescription that people need for sports betting after tremendous pressure from your parents to become a doctor. You've exceeded their wildest hopes and dreams. So what's your prop bet of the day?
Yep, that would have that certainly would have broke the streak. We still might be in danger here, but yeah, RJ Barrett under 1.5, -128. Put it on the board.
I have to say, and Eric, I'll give you a chance here to talk about it too, because I know you probably have some thoughts, but I have to say I have RJ Barrett at 1.5 3-pointers made on the nose in my projections today. And I think one thing that gives me some concern, and normally I've been on the same page with Ben throughout this win streak, or, even if I've nickel and dimed and pointed some other parts out, it's been usually the both of us being right on something. The Magic do give up 7% more 3-pointers, and they're not assisted 3-pointers either. That's just a guy shooting, and that is sort of Barrett's game. So I actually might take the over here, and that scares me, Ben, because I don't want you to lose your undefeated streak. But Eric, you be the tiebreaker. Would you go over or under on RJ Barrett's 1.5 threes?
If I just say I'm neutral, can we all be friends? So I don't have to take
no,
I have to take a side. I have to. Okay. I would probably side on the under in this spot then too. You're talking about a situation where if you're making 2 of 6, That's 33%. RJ Barrett in the long run, like we're talking just from a volume perspective, isn't attempting enough threes to really kind of sneak up towards that 2 number for me. If he goes 2 for 4, 2 for 3, and he beats you, so be it. But I would probably edge slightly towards that under.
Okay, I guess I'm alone on this island here. So team RJ Barrett, a team I never thought I'd be on at any point in my life. Now, I guess I'm there tonight. But one place we can get a little different with our prop bets is no house advantage. And let's talk about some of the top props on there for key players and ask Ben and Eric if they like them or not. The first prop that I have on here, Bradley Beal, over under 43.5 points, plus rebounds, plus assists. One of the prop bet types that you can make a no house advantage. Eric, I'll ask you first here. Bradley Beal is over under 43.5 for points, rebounds, and assists. Is that one you want to take the over or the under?
I'm probably going to be setting on the under a little bit. I mean, obviously, what's crazy is that this game doesn't necessarily have the lower total that you're looking at from Vegas as opposed to the Kings game. Like we looked at the Kings as such an exponentially better game environment, and yet this one's pretty darn good. I'm gonna shade on the under there.
Ben, how about you?
Yeah, certainly. Alex's projections have identified that product of a tough game against the Jazz. Think Beal's going to be busy, no doubt, but I don't think it eclipses that. So I will lean under.
Yeah, I think the under. The one thing I could see working out for Beal is that he does take a preponderance of his shots in the mid-range, and that is what actually helped Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both have decent results against Utah. So that's my one caveat, but I think the rebounds and assist numbers aren't going to be there at a high level anyway. So you're basically looking for Beal then to get there by points mostly, and I don't know that he does. So I would also shade the under on that one. Our next no house advantage prop, John Collins, over under 28.5 points on rebounds. And this is one, Ben, that could be drastically different if you want the over under if Clint Capella is in or out.
So this speaks to, we say it every show, Spags, they can't adjust. Now the books, when we get status clarification on Capella, they will adjust John Collins accordingly. We can exploit it here. So certainly if those guys are ruled out, I would not be nearly as interested in going under here. But if we get word that those guys are in, clearly John Collins' production is going to take a hit. And I think you can take advantage of this under.
Agreed. It's one of those wait and see approaches that you have for NHA. You can late swap, so you can get yourself off of a number and go to the inverse. So I like the static pricing where we're able to take advantage of it. If you're playing over there and you have multiple lineups, they do have the new CSV function, which works pretty seamlessly now. I'm enjoying being able to do some of the multi-entering over there. Hasn't always gone the best in a couple of these spots here for me, but I absolutely love playing over there, and it's been profitable over the long term. I'm going to continue try to put a couple in there today as we're on the show. I believe I'm on the live before lock, but I'll sneak a couple of those in as well.
Yeah, I think the under right now definitely seems like the way, as you can see on the screen, that Awesemo is shading right now, but that's one where you got to pay attention to the news, and I think it gets closer to a high probability play if we do get Capella out. But right now, I think this is probably one of the better unders on the board for no house advantage today. Our last, I guess 50-50, this is what actually is probably the most 50-50 proposition today. Rudy Gobert, over under 1.5 assists. Eric, I'll tell you, here's a spoiler. I have a projected for 1.4 assists, so do what you will with that. You want to take the over under for Rudy Gobert?
So this is a stay away on NHA. Is that kind of the way that I can put that?
It could be like a 9, like a 1 or a 2 pointer, like a really low owned bet to get.
Okay. Yeah. Cause we're looking for those low owned 1 pointers. I definitely agree with you. I think that's what we should probably do. If I had to go one direction or the other, I would probably, I know that Alex is a little bit on the over. I'll take the under just simply because you're looking at a situation where some of these other pieces are going to be doing more of the ball handling duty throughout. I know you take Mike Conley off the floor, and that's another ball handler that would otherwise be capable. So maybe you could see a slight uptick for Gobert, but not a guy that is going to be going out and distributing and looking for it. I know 2 assists isn't a whole lot to get to, and he could just run into that by accident on a couple handoffs to the basket or something. But if I had to go one way or the other, I would probably lean a little bit on the under.
Yeah, certainly a coin toss, but it's simple fact that what I'll do here, I go to the books that have this posted, they're shaded to the under -135, -128. That gives me some confidence that, although it's coin flip, the more likely outcome is slightly under 1.5 than slightly over it. So as usual, Spags, your 1.4 probably spot on. We're all in unison here. Rudy Gobert for 1 or 0 assists tonight.
I mean, there's no way he can get to 2. It's 1.4 bust. I
that's right.
Can't believe it. Take the under. And the highest probability bet on the board right now, according to Awesemo, is the over on Joe Ingles' 3.5 assist prop at a 93.8% chance of hitting. We talked about this one earlier. The assist rates may not change, but not having Mike Conley on the floor, taking up the assists that he normally would, that means that the rate has a little more value. In this spot, Ben, do you feel like this would be your 10-pointer on No House Advantage, given that, as we talk about every show, the lines are static, so they're probably affecting or reflecting the fact that Conley was expected in?
No doubt. This is a situation when you get this guys this high in terms of percentage, you want to not mess around. Does it have to be your absolute 10? Maybe not, but you're really trying to maximize those top end things. If everything checks out in terms of the late breaking news, this is the type of one that you're going to anchor those lineups with.
Yeah, I think the thing with Ingles, so again, I talked about how his assist rate only goes up 0.5% with or without Conley on the floor. What changes are the minutes. He's going to get more opportunity to be on the floor because they need him out there distributing, doing other things. So you're going to see a little bit extra minutes run. So that's why the projection's really, really popping for him. So yeah, I would have no problem putting him up in the 10-point slots.
Yeah, a 94% chance of hitting the over on that one. And one way to get different could be going to his points plus assists, which is at a 12.5 line, and a 92.6% chance of hitting. So that's one way I like to get different on No House Advantage, but make sure you are playing over there. Of course, they are the leader in peer-to-peer prop betting in a DFS format for really a bunch of sports, NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. Let's go to nohouseadvantage.com or download the No House Advantage app and use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up, because they will deposit match any new users $20 right away. That's a big advantage for you to build your bankroll, and playing some tournaments recently that have had some overlay. So go to nohouseadvantage.com or download No House Advantage in the App Store now. And again, guys, smash that like button now. We got the deeper dive coming up in just 15 minutes. We want to show those guys some love, make it easy for them to not make Josh make him look like a dick on the Live Before Lock show. Actually, he's not on Live Before Lock today, right? Is it you again, Eric?
It's me and Greg. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, so that won't make Eric look like a dick then when he shames everybody for likes.
Not that hard.
Does. But make sure you hit that like button now. Get us a good number here so we can show we don't need no stinking Josh Engelman around these parts. We can get it done without him and his stupid nerd takes and Alex Len recommendations. Boo-hoo. Go hit that like button now. Malakar with the super chat. Again, normally not a super chat show, but we take this fast because we answered it already. Do you think Roby will play with Horford and Moses? Eric, I'll just ask you fast here because this game, as we mentioned earlier, Roby did start the last game that Horford was available. Moses Brown started the second half, but quickly came off to yield for Roby without any foul issues or anything. But Eric, how do you feel about it? Do you think Roby will play alongside these guys or will at least get enough minutes to be viable?
No, I think that this is definitely a stay away spot for Roby. Right now, Alex has him projected, I believe, around 22 minutes from the last time that I looked. I don't want to really go that direction on this slate. I think that there's more upside that exists for both Horford or going the direction of Moses Brown, who's my preferred route, a little, obviously much cheaper. We could see a little bit more minutes run there. I think they're probably going to project around the same minutes, but what they aren't the same is the same price. 4,800 for Roby. I'm really not kind of looking to go that direction over on Fanduel. Draftkings, I can't recall what his price is, but definitely probably a stay away for me.
Ben, I don't think you need to chime in on this. Eric did enough.
No, he's covered everything that I could possibly say about Roby. He just said, and then some. Good job. You that was all you. I'm figuring back in there.
Also, anybody on Top Shot, by the way, the packs are supposed to be dropping soon.
Yeah, they broke it, I think.
Yeah, this is not going well. Working, so that's.
Well, I called in a favor. I didn't want to tell you guys. I called in a favor to delay it until we're off the show. You know how it is.
Yeah, we have those polls. Yeah.
$230 pack today with one rare moment involved. If you are dabbling in Top Shot, as all of us seem to be, get in there today. Hopefully it'll open up at some point soon. Let's keep going through the show though, as I painfully refresh every time I'm not talking. Let's do the DFS hedge, where we can talk about how can you hedge daily fantasy lines with a bet. Let's take the over on a prop for a player that you're fading tonight. And I think I'll introduce the first concept here, because what we talked about earlier with Orlando and the Knicks, and the fact that right now I would heavily favor Randall. I think taking the Magic money line is one way I can sort of get different there and trust the idea that maybe the Knicks have a downer day. Maybe Vooch has an outlier day if I don't get enough ownership. That's the one that jumped out to me. But Ben, you're an expert on these things. So what would be your hedge play potentially for the DFS component of things?
So it's really difficult on this, because normally the way to hedge, if you were going to do something like this, is to amass crazy ownership on a guy, 50, 60%, and particularly let it be a binary superstar. Kyrie comes to mind, where if he drops 60 points, 45 of them may be real points. And here you have cheap Knick guards guys like Clarkson. I don't know if you're really going to get enough equity if you're like betting against them, shorting them in a prop and, to play them in DFS or vice versa. I think what I'd really do, you guys are both with the late weight show and things of that nature. If you're late in this slate and something breaks and you see that, you're in potentially in a really good spot, maybe you do something with the Lakers game, maybe you do something with Charlotte, because it's a little more drilled down. Right now with 6 games, I wouldn't be messing around with any hedges.
I think one way to possibly do it is kind of what we were talking about with Joe Ingles, going over to NHA, putting him up in a 10 or a 9-point confidence slot, because I am going to be lighter on some of the other DFS sites on DraftKings FanDuel as of right now. That can change. It depends what other value presents itself. It depends how the news breaks down in a couple of these other places. But I think going to Ingles on an assist prop, which is just clearly undervalued. He's at 3.5 there. We could take the over going that direction, put him in one of the top confidence slots, and then also be short on the DFS side for DraftKings and FanDuel. That feels like kind of the one way, like that's something that I've been trying to do. If there's like one specific line that sticks out, his assist number's too low. There's no way around that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he gets to 35 DraftKings or FanDuel points.
And now is that time for Jordan. Bark, bark, woof, woof. Good dog, bad dog. In real life, there's no such thing as a bad dog, and betting in DFS there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight? Let's hit that first. Ben, I'll ask you, who is your good dog right now?
So I'm going to go with college basketball. I'm sorry, Spags. I have to do it. The tournament starts tonight with playing games. I do want to say real quick, a lot of people have asked. We did a bracket show last night, live before lock, me and Matt G tomorrow, leading you up to the actual tip of the tournament. The full package, projections, everything, $29.95. Get on in there. It's certainly not too late. Things are just getting underway. First game, tips in 10 minutes. So I know people, while you're building your NBA lineups, if you want something to sweat, Mount St. Mary's and Texas Southern is a game I think is very interesting. It's right around a pick 'em. Mount St. Mary's is now a 1-point favorite. So I guess I really can't call them my good dog. My plan is Rune Spags, kind of in a bind here, but I'm going to go to Mount St. Mary's in this game. I know I'm derailing the segment a little, but if you're looking for a random game with some action, Mount St. Mary's to get March Madness started.
Have no fear, Ben. I'm getting gateway errors on Top Shot.
Okay,
so
well, there we go. It goes
I was going to say, I knew we were all freaking out about Top Shot. We were all clicking buttons.
No one even heard what I said.
I was talking. Nobody was looking at me.
I heard Mount St. Mary's, I think.
Okay, that's good. Because if this loses, it's like it never happened. Men in Black style.
Hang on. Did I make a bet on this on the under yesterday? Did Matt recommend the under on this? I feel like I put this in a parlay of today. I believe he did. Maybe not.
And I was on that show, and I really don't know. I was probably thinking about Top Shots.
That's fine.
This is what happens.
Well, Eric, awesome. How about you? Do you have a good dog that pops to mind?
Not anymore. I mean, that was so good. I'm so excited to go on and just randomly find that line right now. I might be doing some live betting during some of that while I'm building some lineups. That kind of seems like the fun course. I think college basketball, there are some massive numbers that you can grab on things and kind of react in the moment of it, depending on what sports book you're at. But one of my good dogs in general, I'm going to just kind of sit on these Orlando Magic. I like going that direction against the Knicks. Again, we'll see what that news ends up shaking out as. If Terrence Ross is in, I'm going to be especially interested in capitalizing and taking some of those points just in a slower paced game. I believe in the offensive profile of Vooch in this spot. He doesn't really have to play much defense there. He's not going to be on Randall. So I'm excited to possibly capitalize on a little bit of equity there with the Magic.
I think for me, my good dog is probably going to be Washington. I think they can cover this game. I don't think DFS-wise, I love their plays, but I think Beal is a guy I'm willing to take some stabs at for the reasons I mentioned earlier, just him being able to dominate in the mid-range game, which is one spot that Utah will be happy to let people shoot. So that's the spot that I would go to. And I'm officially tilted, by the way, over this Top Shot thing, because it now has logged me out, said my session is expired, so I'm going to have no chance of getting this F-bomb pack.
I assume they got to push it, right?
Yeah, I hope so. For me, I'm on a show right now, and I will bash them endlessly.
Yeah, you got that social reach. Call in a favor, Spags. But
that's true. I'm sure Pete Overzet got us that rat bastard. Reuniting with him tomorrow for Splash Play. So check that out at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Let's talk about make or break. Eric, I'll ask you first. Who's your make or break for today's slate for you? We don't even need a bad dog. We don't have enough time.
Yeah, no, we've gone over this at length, but man, Orlando Magic, The Orlando Magic and the New York Knicks, this entire game, it's the lowest on the slate, but it goes against everything I believe of in DFS. It's a terrible game environment. It's the very early window of those 3 games that are tipping off early. So there's no late swap ability with any of those players that you have in it. And yet I just have gobs and gobs of the Julius Randle, Nikola Vucevic side of it. I'll have a bunch of Terrence Ross if he ends up in. I have a bunch of RJ Barrett and a bunch of Alec Burks, who's my highest owned player in the entire game. So if that one ends up not being good, I'm not going to have a great night.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the same page with that one. Ben, how about you? Is there a make or break that you see that could be different from the Knicks, who we've talked about ad nauseum throughout the show?
So I do think, just going back to what we talked about earlier, Lillard and particularly the Blazers at home, I thought that spread would be higher. I'm not going to lie. And I probably am going to have a position on Portland. I may look to Lillard's prop. I talked about that RJ Barrett one. Lillard, of course, his 3-point prop is 4.5, but I kind of have some interest. I'm going to do some research after the show and see what we can get there, because again, the Pelicans have been so bad defending, and I think we see that tonight. So maybe bet the Blazers straight. I may wait because that game is going to be wild and look for an opening. Maybe I can get the Blazers +3, +4, maybe when they start slow. So I'm going to look to that game. I hope Portland wins. That would be very advantageous for me.
And let's go to fade of the day here. And Eric, I'll start with you, and feel free to stretch a little bit because we got 5 minutes here, and goddamn Top Shot not working for me.
Well, I do have one question for Ben, because I do have Ben on here. Well, everybody's shaking their head. Everybody's on tilt at the moment. It's okay. Live betting. So this is kind of an interesting factor for a lot of people who might not be or who might have just gotten betting leading up to college basketball for March Madness. When are you looking to live bet? When are you looking to hedge your position on a certain game? I think that this is kind of an important talking point, because I think there is a lot of money to be made. I feel like some of my best days in sports betting in general have been live betting March Madness. So if you could just talk people through a little bit of why and how you would go about doing that.
Yeah, so it's definitely something. I mean, part of it I do believe is feel, but it's really just looking and realizing that it's just a long game, and not taking the score at face value. I can't tell you the number of times you see a game and a team is up 12-6, 12-4, and the other team is they've taken 5 more field goal attempts and they're shooting 12% from the field. And you kind of realize, okay, when this normalizes, this could be a good situation. Or a team in college basketball, particularly 7 fouls and more, you start going to the line. If 4 minutes into the game, one of the teams has 6 fouls, well, you have a feeling that other team in the first half in particular may be playing catch up. So when you look at a team like the Blazers, just to bring it back to NBA, certainly they're very, very volatile and they can score in bunches. If they go down, they lose the first quarter by 6-8 points, they can make that up in 2 minutes, but the line is going to shift. It doesn't mean blindly back them. I think that's the one thing to keep in mind. But if you see that, wow, Dame is ice cold, they're getting the looks from 3, they're just not hitting them. Well, I'm willing to buy that'll normalize. And like you said, it can be very advantageous. So looking at that, I certainly, in these college basketball games where things swing, it's out of control, not to panic and just stay the course, pick your spots, but absolutely live betting is a part of the profile.
Love it. Yeah. Hearing it from you reinforces a lot of the good things. We have so many different offers that are coming out for different things. I know we have some stuff going with Monkey Knife Fight too for March Madness. Jump on in there. For NHA, obviously we can take advantages of those props and late swap, but once the game starts, there are ways to still continue to capitalize. And so just make sure that you're keeping your eyes on some of the box score numbers as well, rather than necessarily what's happening on the floor. Yeah. That's something that I've been doing a lot, and realizing when a team gets off to a terrible shooting start. We've seen so many bad first halves from some of these college basketball teams within tournament play already from their conference tournaments. And I feel like jumping on some of those lines when they feel a little inefficient for once things normalize, that's just been a very profitable strategy for me.
I think the drop is delayed, Spags. You got your whip.
I have the screen open now on my phone here. You can see my cracked iPhone. It says pack not available, which is unbelievable. I planned my whole day around this twice now. I was like, I got to get off the Peloton by 12, and then they move it, and then unbelievable.
Leanne Hainsby has to wait. That's just what it is.
Any fade of the day for you guys? Eric, I'll ask you first here. We got to jump off for the deeper dive.
I'm not going to recommend fading Damian Lillard, but I'm going to do it. So that's awful.
Ben, how about you? Any fade of the day?
I think this Jazz Wizards game in general, it's not to say we've talked about Clarkson and those guys, but I just look at that game and I come at it from a betting standpoint. I think that line is about right, Spags. I kind of lean with you. If I had to take the points, I would, but I'm not looking to mess around. I don't think Beal has a huge game by any stretch, so that's one I could do without.
I think for me, my fade looks like right now it's going to be Karl-Anthony Towns. I think Vucevic is a better player that could get potentially much better. And I know the price points are a little bit different, but Towns going against Phoenix. Phoenix is so competent. And Ayton is quietly having a really good year for himself in terms of, not as high usage, but defending better, rebounding better. So to me, I think Towns right now looks like my fade of the day. And drop is now at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you guys in the chat for helping assuage my various fears. So tune in to the late slate sweat and swap show coming up later today, because I will be telling you if I got that pack or not. Most likely should be upset I didn't get one. Eric, you're going to be on Live Before Lock later, so give us the final plug before we call it quits.
Live Before Lock, we're going to be doing a Jock Market for half an hour afterwards, after lock as well, talking about taking advantage of positions after lock. That's another great way to do it. But yeah, going to be on that with Greg Ehrenberg, so check it out.
Smash the like button, guys. We will be back tomorrow. I think tomorrow it's going to be me hosting again alongside Greg Ehrenberg, a two-man weave. Watch Ben's shows as well. Ben, actually, quick plug for you. I know Lofty won't mind. He always loves a good Ben plug. So Ben, plug all the March Madness content you have coming up.
I just say it one more time. We did a bracket show last night, but tomorrow morning, me and Matt G, 11 to 12, Live Before Lock, DFS plays, bracket, best bets. And if you want all that and the premium projections, which are absolutely fire, $29.95. You get every game of the tournament, not just the first round, the entire game. So come on in. I know everyone's playing brackets. We've got a ton of content, articles for every game. I cannot wait. You have any questions, you hit us up in Slack. We're more than willing to help.
All right, deeper dive coming up next, guys. Live Before Lock after that. We appreciate you watching. Tune in tomorrow. See you guys again soon, and good luck with your packs. Bye.
Good luck with those packs.
I've never been more tilted on a show than that. Like, I've had lineups ruined.
You might have keeled over on the show.
All right, guys.
Later. Good luck.
Later.
No packs. Sad.
No packs.
Fucking hate this site.
I can't believe I just dropped $2,000.
That's ridiculous.
Now you have to FOMO into it. You good, Jordan? Audio? Good. I am sitting where I'm going to sit. I don't know.
Thanks.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive. I am Dave Lochran. On the Twitters at Lafay_D, joined as always by Adam Scher at Ship My Money DFS. What's going on, brother?
Pretty disappointed, missed out on, didn't miss out. Everybody missed out on another Top Shot drop. But get to talk about DFS, which of course is never frustrating.
I would imagine you're not shocked by these developments, though.
No, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 100 times, however, the saying goes. But
But hey, they created a vent channel in Discord, so that helps everybody.
Yeah. Didn't they? I thought they had one and got rid of it.
Maybe, but it's back. You just can't say anything to vent. Like, you can only say complimentary thing. If you say anything else, they just remove your comment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is the vent channel a trap? Like everybody that goes in there and complains gets kicked out of Discord?
Exactly right. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. We got a 6-gamer to break down, and we're going to do all of that over the next hour. Big news with the New York Knicks dropped earlier today. No Emmanuel quickly. It's pretty significant, and a couple other spots that are going to take some time to break down, but we're going to go through all of it. It's the most comprehensive DFS basketball show you're going to find out there. So hit that thumbs up, show some love, show some support, help us combat that YouTube algorithm that gives all of its preferential treatment to the bigger guys. Let's prove to them that we're worth something around here, and subscribe to the channel. That's the biggest thing, more important than any thumbs up, any comments. Subscribing to the channel helps us more than anything. It's totally free to do. And if you hate it, we'll gladly refund your misery. You never have to hear from us again. Just simply click unsubscribe anytime you'd like. I don't think you'll want to, though. Anyway, same question as always, Adam. Initial look at this slate, 6 games. What jumps out to you?
It's kind of a weird slate, like matchup wise. There's a lot of really slow and or good defensive teams on this slate. And then you have Minnesota, you have New Orleans, you have Portland, you have Washington. So it's kind of like a lot of teams in really bad matchups, a few teams in great matchups. And then you have some messy situations too, notably Orlando, where we're still waiting on some news, but it could be Houston-esque potentially there. And then, Utah without Mike Conley in a great matchup. Like you said, Emmanuel quickly out for the Knicks. That's another situation where they're going to be pretty shorthanded in the backcourt. So for a 6-game slate, there's, I think, a lot of kind of different ways you can approach it.
Well, let's jump into it and discuss some of those ways that we can get a little bit different today. We'll start with Utah and the Washington Wizards. This is a different Jazz team. They're playing at a top 8 pace over the last month. This game's got a 235.5 total. Wizards are the fastest paced team in the league by a wide margin, 27th in defensive rating. They've been a little bit better over the last 30 days, but still certainly not a team that you're worried about. And now you have no Mike Conley. So introduce Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, clear 6th man of the year right now. Bring Joe Jingles into the mix. There's a lot here that needs to be discussed. I say first, let's start with Donovan Mitchell, who's somebody that with Conley off the floor this year is a 30% usage player, maybe not the greatest per minute production. And the price point isn't exactly discounted, but it is the Wizards. And I think we have to keep that in mind as we talk about every player here and every price point that this is arguably the best matchup in the league that a team could draw.
Yeah. And the other thing from kind of a slate overview standpoint is that there's not a whole lot to pay up for here. Like, you have LeBron, you have Towns, you have Dame, but no Jokic, no Giannis, no Luka, no Harden, none of these guys up at the top. So it makes going to these players like Mitchell, whereas, yesterday we had talked about how even if a player has a high ceiling at $9K or $9,500, a lot of times you'd rather get to that $10,500 guy. They don't really exist for the most part on this slate. So it should make it even easier to get to Mitchell. So far this year, he's played 7 games without Mike Conley. He's averaged 1.35 Draftkings points per minute, 35 minutes per game. 33.8% usage rate, 31.9% assist percentage, gets this great matchup against Washington on a back-to-back. There's really nothing to dislike, I don't think, about Donovan Mitchell here.
All right, so what about Clarkson? He's going to get some minutes without Mitchell, and he's a gunner. The guy there isn't a shot that he doesn't like. Now, he's not going to do much in terms of peripherals, rebounding, assists, pretty much just a gunner, going to look to get as many shots up as possible in a fast-paced game. Maybe he gets to 28, 30 minutes. That would be nice. You're going to have to pay $6,000 for him on DraftKings, which, I think it's reasonable, but it's not a discount. $5,200 on Fanduel is a totally different story, though. What are your thoughts on Clarkson against Washington here? And, of course, Mike Conley's absence helps him quite a bit.
I think he looks really good on both sides. Obviously, he looks better on Fanduel at 5,200, but grading out well for me at 6,100 as well. He's played in the same 7 games as Mitchell without Conley. And the big thing is that he's averaged 29.7 minutes per game in those games. So he's someone that does have the ability to play 30 plus minutes here. He's averaged 1.1 fantasy points per minute, has a 30% usage rate. And like you said, he's not going to do a ton in the way of peripherals, but he does have a 19.5% assist percentage. So he's doing more than nothing. He's at least contributing a little bit there, and he'll play minutes without Mitchell, as you said too. Like he will most likely get Joe Ingles in the starting lineup in place of Conley. So you should still get Clarkson off the bench. He'll most likely have his minutes staggered with Mitchell. So I think he's still a really high upside option here, given the matchup.
All right. Well, do you expect Ingles to start? We've seen that be the case before, where they just slide Donovan Mitchell to the point guard position and Joe Ingles moves himself into the starting lineup. Do you think that'll be the case again today?
Yeah, I'm expecting Ingles will start. He's typically started when Conley's been out. He's averaged between 31 and 32 minutes per game in those games. So I'm expecting he'll slide into the starting lineup, and he'll be another good value from this Utah team.
All right. So how about the rest of Utah specifically? And we can talk about Royce O'Neal in a minute, but what about Rudy Gobert? And I think, by the way, one of the most kind of under the radar fantasy producers this year has been Rudy Gobert. If you look at his per minute production, it's pretty shocking even to me to see that he's putting up north of 1.3 Draftkings points per minute on the season. He's got a career high 23% rebound rate, a 7.5% block rate. Even his usage rate, just shy of 18%, ties a career high. So you're paying a little bit for him, of course. It's Rudy Gobert against Washington, but again, this matchup against Washington's front court, whether it's Robin Lopez, Alex Len, or I don't know, Wagner, if he gets back in the rotation, this is a really good spot for Rudy Gobert. But are you willing to pay for him today?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good play. I think that it'll just sort of depend on what the rest of your lineup looks like as far as, which of these primarily the main 4 Utah guys that we've mentioned so far you'll go to, but I don't have any issue with Gobert's salary either. The biggest knock on him this year has been his playing time. For a lot of the season, you could only really count on around 29 minutes for him. But over the last month, which is Utah's last 10 games, he has averaged 32.5 minutes per game. A lot of the minutes he was losing earlier in the year, to some extent, were blowout based, but there were also just kind of shorter rotations. And we're seeing him get more minutes now. Derek Favors has been pretty disappointing this season from an actual basketball standpoint. And I think that's led recently to Quinn Snyder giving Gobert more minutes, whereas maybe the plan earlier in the year was to, sort of limit his minutes during the regular season. They thought they had, a strong backup in Favors, but he's really struggled. And you've seen Gobert's playing time ramp up. So a good offensive rebounder going up against a Washington team that overall is a terrible rebounding team, but also gives up a lot of offensive rebounds. Should be able to get some putbacks here, which obviously increases his offensive game, and you get block upside with him as well. So, the price tag I think is a little bit higher than it has been for a lot of the season, but I also have thought that he was underpriced for most of the season, so I'm not too concerned about that.
Do you have any other interest in Utah? And again, I want to leave no stone unturned with this team because they are facing Washington.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Mitchell, Gobert, Clarkson, Ingles are like the main 4, but especially if you're playing tournaments and looking for lower owned guys or playing multiple lineups, don't sleep on Bojan Bogdanovic or Royce O'Neal. I mean, you're still talking about guys that are going to play 30 plus minutes against the Wizards here. The Jazz have a 125 implied total. Bojan Bogdanovic should get plenty of open looks against his former team. Royce O'Neal is more expensive than I would ever like to pay for him, but he is someone that contributes a little bit in every category, which against a team like the Wizards that is going to let you score at will, is going to let you pick up assists at will and get extra possessions, and doesn't rebound well and turns the ball over a ton. Like, that's the kind of team that Royce O'Neal should have success against, or his style of play typically does better against. Like, he will most likely get a couple of steals thanks to Russell Westbrook. He'll get more rebounds than normal most likely. So not priorities compared to the other guys, but Bogdanovic and O'Neal both certainly in play. Larger field tournaments, 3,300 for Derek Favors is fine, but obviously don't play him with Gobert.
So that conversation we had yesterday about the question I received on Twitter asking how many players are you willing to play from the same team, right? I think this is kind of a good and unique situation. Excellent matchup for Utah. And don't worry, we got plenty of time to get to all these other games, all of these other spots, but this is a huge one. Great matchup, and you're missing your starting point guard. So given that, because someone also asked, can I play Ingles and Clarkson in the same lineup? Yes, of course you can. But given all of the variables that we have here, what are you willing to do in terms of how much Utah you're willing to have in one lineup?
I think this is one where, I'd said yesterday that my general rule of thumb, especially on DraftKings, is 3. That's most likely where I'd end up here. Like when you think it through, the main guys, the main scorers, or the main fantasy producers, Mitchell, Gobert, and Clarkson, they're all relatively expensive. So if you were to roster all 3 of them, you're allocating like half of your salary or close to half your salary to those guys. It would be pretty tough to get them all to get where you want them to be, and then a 4th guy to get there. Obviously, you wouldn't want Favors and Gobert together. I mean, if you had something like Ingles, Bogdanovich, and O'Neal, the pricing is better, but you're also talking about guys that kind of will most likely cut into each other's stats a little bit, at least, because none of them are going to be the highest usage guys out there. So I think it sets up as another spot where I probably wouldn't want more than 3, just because it's really hard to come up with a combination of 4 that makes sense and seems remotely likely to have everyone have a big game.
Your background looks great, man.
Thanks. Sean Taylor jersey. Loving it.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
No, seriously though, it looks really good. What's that reflection in the Sean Taylor jersey? No, I see a beautiful,
beautiful rainy day overlooking the harbor.
Are you on the, wow. Nice. You should turn your camera around and show them what you got going on over there.
There'd be too much apartment mess in that.
Yeah. Okay. You're embarrassed. Well, looks good. Taylor jersey. We got some shot glasses going on over there.
Yeah, I got my shot glass collection up. Got the Washington Nationals World Series, whatever that's called, towel.
How long until that whole shelf just comes crashing down?
I'm kind of scared to go to sleep tonight.
Oh, if it happens, God, I pray that it happens on this show.
Well, and the thing is, like, I think the Sean Taylor jersey is fine. It's the shot glasses that I'm really concerned about. So, like, that's just going to be glass everywhere and wood pieces everywhere. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah, won't be fun. It's like that when people get they're playing video games and they get, what's it called? When like people they get swatted, where they call SWAT on them and they break into their house. You ever see that?
No.
Oh, check out getting swatted. It's pretty awful. Don't do that to Adam. Don't swat Adam. That'd be a horrible thing to do. What are we doing with the Washington Wizards? And starting with Russell Westbrook, his numbers are so absurd this year. He's another guy that it's like, okay, he's on a bad team. We know that he's not maybe good for actually winning games, but he just keeps churning out monster performances. He's averaging a half a rebound shy of a triple-double on the season. Once again, Utah actually playing at a top, I think, 10 pace. He's got a 32% usage rate, 1.5 DraftKings points per minute, and a 47% assist rate, 14% assists. It's just every single day, if you're rostering Westbrook, if it's a close game, you get 36 to 39 minutes from him, and he just does everything again.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good. And obviously, he's a much better option on DraftKings than Fanduel, especially because you're not getting a discount on Fanduel. The scoring just favors him so much more on DraftKings, like we were talking about yesterday. Brutal matchup against the Jazz, no doubt about it. But as you said before, the Jazz have been playing faster. This should be a back and forth game for as long as it's competitive. And if it does stay competitive, you have to assume that at least one of Westbrook or Beal, probably both, are having pretty good games. So I think Westbrook is someone that it's going to be really tough to get to, like in cash games or in, optimal lineups. But I do think that he makes a lot of sense in tournaments, because not only does he give you that really high ceiling, but he does actually have a positive correlation with these Utah guys. Like, that several Utah players are going to be some of the highest owned guys on this slate because of the matchup. If you get full minutes from all of these Utah guys that everyone is playing, there's a pretty good chance that you're getting like 37, 38 minutes from Westbrook and or Beal at much lower ownership than the Utah guys. So I do think that in tournaments, it's kind of a cool strategy to, pair the popular Utah guys that are clear top plays on the slate with some pieces from Washington, and just hope that you get a shootout here that, Washington shoots better than normal or Utah plays a little bit worse defensively than normal.
Pack drop delayed indefinitely.
Good.
So
does that mean the marketplace is closed indefinitely also?
Very, very likely. Yo, the Awesemo badges that we got for YouTube now for the members look sick. Our boy Jake D, that does all the graphic design, designed 6 of them like in tiers with diamond, gold, bronze, they look so awesome. I just saw a couple of them pop up in the chat, and I'm very happy to see that. So they're awesome. And the diamond and the platinum ones look so sick. So what are we doing with Beal? What are we doing with it's really Westbrook and Beal, and then we can talk Alex Len, which we will do. But are you on Bradley Beal?
In the same way that I'm on Russell Westbrook. The price on Beal is certainly more appealing. He's, $1,100 less expensive on DraftKings, but obviously he's not giving you the rebounds. He's not giving you the assists. It would be very, very surprising if you get a triple-double out of Bradley Beal, whereas Westbrook already has 12 this season. Saw the stat last night, actually. Russell Westbrook is, I believe, 2. It's less than 5 triple doubles away from being the Washington Wizards all-time leader in triple doubles in a career.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Who's the leader?
I don't know. Some guy I'd never heard of, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Or at least that I can't remember, but he had like either 14 or 17 or something. Westbrook already has 12. So you're not getting that same sort of upside from Beal. Like for Beal to go for 60 fantasy points, he has to score like 45 actual points, but still clearly, going to play a lot of minutes if the game's competitive and should be the second highest scoring fantasy player on Washington.
All right. So I'm doing this. You can hate me for it. I hate myself for it, for many things, but specifically for this. Can we talk about Alex Len a little bit going up against the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert, where Scott Brooks, I don't know, maybe he wants to get him into the play-in round. They're not too far out of it. And here's the thing. Last game, you've seen this plenty of times where smaller centers or smaller guys are playing the 5, where Robin Lopez plays 8 minutes, Wagner doesn't play at all, and Len plays like 24. Do you think it's possible that we see 48 minutes of actual traditional centers tonight?
Yeah, I think they came close last night too. And the big thing has been that Wagner essentially has just been out of the rotation now. That was one thing that I was interested in seeing once they moved Len into the starting lineup was, does it become still a 3-man just where, Wagner is coming off the bench? But so far it's mostly been just Alex Len and Robin Lopez. Last night you got about 24 minutes for Len, you got about 22 for Lopez, and then whatever, the last 2 or 3 minutes was neither one of them. I would expect here that you're getting similar. For Derek they can play small against Derek Favors. So, you certainly could see Rui at the 5 in that situation. But against Gobert, I assume they're going to have one of Len or Lopez out there the entire time.
So do you have any interest in the front court?
Yeah. Again, it's kind of the same thing we've talked about each time we've talked about it. Like, I have interest because they're so cheap. I'm not really confident that Alex Len plays a ton of minutes. You're just kind of going to see the minutes fluctuate based on how he's playing, how the game's going, and everything like that. But at 3,400, he's averaged about 0.85 fantasy points per minute as a starter this year. And for his career, he's a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. So at 3,400, if he gets the 18 minutes that he's averaged in his starts with Washington or with Westbrook and Beal both active, you're not going to be in a bad situation as long as he produces around an average rate. And if he does play more minutes, gets 24 like he did last night or 32 like he did in the first Milwaukee game, he's pretty easily going to beat that salary. And the same goes for Robin Lopez, who's only 3,100. Not as good a fantasy producer as Len, but if Len were to get in foul trouble or something and only play like 14 or 15 minutes, there's a pretty good chance you end up getting 24 or 25 from Lopez on DraftKings at minimum salary. Or close to minimum salary.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. Let's move on, though, because we got 5 more games to touch on. OKC and Atlanta, the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Atlanta Hawks. What's the spread on this one? What do we got? 7 points? Yeah, 7-point dogs, 225.5 total. First off, do you have Capella in or out?
I have him in right now.
Okay. So I do as well, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
With Oklahoma City, you have a bunch of questionable tags here that I'm not necessarily sure what we're going to get. So we know Bazley's out, but Teo Maledon and Lou Dort are both questionable. Do you have everybody in right now?
For OKC, I have, everybody in.
All right. So
Dort and Maledon both in.
All right. So with that said, what are you doing with Moses Brown?
Assuming he's starting, I'm just going back to him at 4,300. It's not as easy a play as it was when he was 3,500, but the thing is that they have incentive to give him minutes, and he's also a productive player. He's averaged about a fantasy point per minute or a little more in his minutes with Gilgeous-Alexander this year. Overall, in the limited time he's been in the NBA between Portland and OKC, he's well over a fantasy point per minute. So he's still cheap enough that you really just don't need that much playing time for him to have success. It's not a great matchup against Atlanta, but it's not terrible either. I think that it's just still a pretty good price point for him.
All right. Do you have interest outside of Brown? Because I'm with you. I think, first of all, if you're taking his per minute production on the season, it's skewed by that last game, right?
Sure,
like
yeah.
1.38 DraftKings points per minute. It's skewed, but he's still been pretty decent. The guy had a 20 point, 16 rebound, 5 block game. It's really solid. And I don't necessarily anticipate the same thing happening. Al Horford is back, but I think you could get on a complete rebuilding garbage basketball team. I wouldn't be surprised if you got another 28 minutes, even 30 minutes tonight. I think that's the high range, but he played 27 minutes on the 13th and Horford was out there. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously Horford being back adds risk to it, but it's just, they should want him on the floor more than Horford. Like, I think that he's cheap enough that if you get like 22 minutes, he still is a good value.
I think so too. But again, like Roby played 26 in that game against the Knicks. Horford played 27 and Brown played 27 as well.
Right.
So what I'm saying is even with Horford back, there's still space for Brown to play decent minutes.
Yeah, agreed. He didn't even really, I mean, he got like 3 minutes of garbage time in that game. So he played 26.6 minutes, take off 3. You're still talking between 23 and 24 minutes.
Yeah. And he's coming off a huge game again on a bad team. What are you doing with the rest of OKC? Do you like anything here?
Not really. The matchup against Atlanta's pretty mediocre. Nothing to be too excited about there. Gilgeous-Alexander is still really expensive on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's 7,900. So he is, I think, a good play there just because he's so much cheaper than he is on DraftKings. I have trouble getting to Horford just because I doubt that he's getting a lot of minutes. He hasn't really all season long, and I expect his minutes to go down from here. Everyone else is, kind of priced up enough too, where I'm not really interested. If Theo Maledon and Dort were ruled out, then you're potentially getting more run for guys like Roby and Bogachevsky. But if we assume those guys are in, I don't have interest in much of anything outside of some Moses Brown.
Okay. Yeah. Where did Drop Roses go? Looking at chat right now. Where did our boy Roses go? I don't know. Someone find out. Someone do some sleuthing and find out where he's disappeared to. Jordan, do you know where he went? Oh, wow. So this is a pride thing. I bet he's watching right now and he's about to pop up in chat. Just watch it. He'll see him just any minute now. He's going to be here.
Wait, Josh says, I took care of it. That's surprising.
Josh, just an absolute curmudgeon. What are you doing with the Atlanta Hawks, Adam? Trae Young is still cheap on FanDuel. Clint Capella is questionable. Of course, if he doesn't play, John Collins, we know, great mid-range option. Get the start at center. We like that a lot. But, yeah, I do think Trae Young at 8,800 is pretty enticing on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think it's a really good price on FanDuel. He somehow was disappointing at 9K against Houston last game, but that's just a price point where I have a hard time getting away from it. It's, OKC has been a pretty solid team defensively. If Lou Dort is in, then I assume he will be doing plenty to defend Trae Young and make life difficult. But still, you're just talking about someone that's going to play 34, 35 minutes if this game's competitive and is obviously a really high upside guy at a cheap salary. Point guard, not a particularly strong position today either. There's some good options on FanDuel, but it's not as deep as normal, obviously, with there being 6 games. So I think Young looks really good there. Going to be more difficult to get to him on DraftKings, but in tournaments, he's still fine. Obviously, Clint Capella is the big news here. Like, if he's in, I like Capella, assuming that he's not too limited. Like, if you get 28 minutes from him at 7,600 on DraftKings, he looks like a good option. If he's out, though, then you should get another big game from John Collins, who has averaged about 1.25 fantasy points per minute at center this year. You should get Nathan Knight potentially playing, 20 plus minutes again at a cheap salary and power forward eligibility on DraftKings. Gallinari gets more minutes as a starter. So it opens up a lot if Capella's out.
Do you think anything else stands out for Atlanta?
Not if Capella's in. I mean, because Capella hurts Collins' production. It takes minutes away from Gallinari. It takes minutes away from Bogdanovic. It kind of makes everything else less appealing. But if he's out, you're getting those minutes opening up for other guys. Like I mentioned, Nathan Knight, probably plays anywhere from 16 to 22 minutes. Collins would get more run if Capella's out. Gallinari gets more run. Bogdanovic gets more run, or potentially gets more run. So it really just opens up a lot if Capella sits. Hopefully
you guys got in on the Shamrock promo for St. Patty's Day, giving half off a week We ran that for a decent amount of time, ended yesterday. But if you didn't and you still want to check out what we have to offer, there's a couple of things you could do. You want to get a sneak peek? Well, we got some free content today. The deep dive is free every day. But other than that, that's free to everybody. But aside from that, the NBA and NHL player rankings are free today, and the MMA top fighters tool. So check them out, or go to awesemo.com/join. Check out everything we have to offer. Talking about no matter what style of player you are, no matter what your budget is. Of course, you could take your stimulus check and you could buy an annual pass. Consider it an investment. Don't tell your wife. Those things will work out for you in the long run. It is a good investment, no doubt about it, but you got a weekly pass. You could do an express weekly for less than $4 a week. You could do it all access monthly, single sport, right? You want to just do baseball. You want to just do football, whatever. We got you. You do the year, the week, the month. You could even do the express week. All of the tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player, Awesemo, Alex Baker himself. He hasn't just stick his name on these. These are his tools that he uses currently to win a ton of money and run up the leaderboards basically every night. So check it out, awesemo.com/join. You're looking at ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, lineup builder for you guys in single entry contests. And all of this stuff isn't just for MME, but if you are into that, we have the Fantasy Cruncher add-on as well, all of our premium articles. And this isn't just for basketball, right? All of those tools we have for every single sport. If they have contests for it on Draftkings, on Fanduel, on anywhere, we have content. So check it out, awesemo.com/join. And be sure to join the premium Slack chat and hop into the office hours where you got our pros that are here on the site answering your questions each and every day, awesemo.com/join. All right, so let's talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, the Orlando Magic and the New York Knicks. You got a Magic team that has a bunch of questionable players, but I'm pretty confident that all of these guys are going to play. They practiced, unless I missed some shoot around news. I think Ross, Gordon, and Fournier will all be active. What do you think?
Yeah, that's my guess. I mean, that's how I have it right now.
Okay. So Orlando right now, of everything I've done, was one of those teams that I just kept coming up pretty much empty on for the most part. Jason Randall's getting some ownership, but aside from that, just aggregate ownership on this whole Orlando team is pretty low.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough matchup with New York. And if Fournier's in, if Ross is in, if Gordon's in, they're all priced in a way that they're not going to look that appealing in this matchup, but they're also taking minutes away from the guys that potentially would be good values. Like if Fournier and or Ross were to sit, you're getting more minutes from Dwayne Bacon. You're getting more minutes, or at least more solidified minutes from Chase and Randall at a cheap salary. Al-Farouq Aminu potentially playing more minutes. But if all those guys are in, it becomes a situation where like you can still take shots on Chase and Randall at 3,400. I think he probably plays 31 minutes with Michael Carter-Williams out. You can obviously still roster Vooch at 10,100. He's been better without Fournier and Gordon this year, as you would expect, but Gordon, I assume, will be significantly limited if he is back. He played about 16 minutes or 15 minutes last game and then hasn't played in a week. So I don't think he'll impact Vooch too much. But outside of those two guys, the best player on the team and the cheapest starter on the team, if Fournier and Ross are in, I think it's going to be really difficult to get to anything.
Yeah, so do I. By the way, taking heat for recommending Alex Len the other day. He sucked. And then the day after that, he has 30, or 2 days after that, he's got 33 Draftkings points. So you can't win them all now, can you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never take credit when Alex Len does well, because I also never, like, all I ever say about Alex Len is if he plays minutes, he'll do well, and I have no idea if he's going to play minutes.
Right. I'm pretty sure I said on the deeper dive with you that there might not be a player in the league that is more liable to just lose minutes out of nowhere, no matter what team he's on and who his coach is. So.
Yeah. And it's one of the, like, when you talk about the Wizards center rotation with Scott Brooks, it's not a situation where like you can do research or watch tape or whatever and decide that like, this is how many minutes guys are going to play. Scott Brooks does not know going into the game how many minutes they're going to play. It depends entirely on like what happens in that one game in a variety of different like variables.
Exactly. So I guess you don't really have anything else on Orlando, but do you think that, and I wanted to make sure I updated this, refresh it, because if you are a premium sub, or even maybe one day when ownership is free and you're looking at it, be sure to always update or refresh it, because it's the most accurate the closer we get to lock. Do you think the Chase and Randall ownership north of 20% at $3,400 on DraftKings makes sense to you?
Yeah, I think it makes sense just because of the slate. There's only 6 games. Utah's the appealing spot where there's someone out, but the guys on Utah are still reasonably priced. There's not like a clear cheap value there. So, Randall at 3,400 makes sense. On the other side of this game, the alternative is Frank Ntilikina, who obviously has his own problems. So, assuming he's going to start, he's been playing 30 plus minutes in a bunch of games anyway, even with Carter Williams there. So, assuming he starts, I think it makes sense. If Fournier is out, it looks even better.
All right. Happy birthday, Rob G. I'm not sure who that is, but someone asked if I would say happy birthday to Rob G. So there it is. Happy birthday, fella. All right. Let's talk about the Knicks side. This is where it starts to get interesting and really messy. You've got no Quickly. You have no Derrick Rose. You have no Peyton. And this might not sound relevant, but it is. No Austin Rivers either. So that leaves us with Frank Ntilikina and Alec Burks and RJ Barrett. Now, I actually wouldn't even be shocked if Barrett ended up getting the start at the point, but it could be Ntilikina as well. If Barrett starts at the point, I like him a whole lot more than I do right now. I already like Alec Burks, played season high 35 minutes last game. He's a gunner. I'm fine with that. But Randall is the guy that no matter who starts at the point, he is the real point guard on this team right now. He's only played 100 minutes with all of these guys off the floor this year, but he has an assist rate close to 40%. He leads the team in every category. He's top 10 in touches on the season, top 10 in rebound chances in the league. Everything he's done has been spectacular, Adam. And now you've got no Rose, Peyton, or Emmanuel Quickly.
Yeah, it's really hard not to like Randall here because on top of that, you assume he's going to play huge minutes. He's topped 40 minutes in his last couple of games for the season. He's averaging almost 37 minutes per game. And like you said, he's played 120 minutes this year without any of Quickly, Rose, or Peyton on the floor. 30.5% usage rate, 37% assist percentage, 16% total rebounding percentage, 1.37 Draftkings points per minute. Everything looks really good there. The matchup against Orlando isn't the best, but it's not terrible either. I think, he's expensive, but it is really difficult not to like Randall because he's just going to have to do so much from a playmaking standpoint. Like whether Ntilikina starts or not, Ntilikina is not taking the ball from Julius Randle.
Yeah. Ntilikina couldn't take the ball from himself. He's a decent defender, or he's a good defender. Ntilikina is a very good defender, but overall production on somebody like him is going to leave a lot to be desired. But in all seriousness, at the same time, like, do you look at Ntilikina and say, we know how Tom Thibodeau functions. He might give him 30 plus minutes and maybe at the bare minimum, he's the dead min. Do you think that Ntilikina still makes some sense?
I think you kind of have to at least.
Yeah, me too. I was hoping you would change my mind on this stuff.
No, but I mean, it's just like Frank Ntilikina is not a good fantasy producer. There's no question about it. But even if you assume he gets like 0.66 fantasy points per minute, for the season, he's played 93 minutes without those guys on the floor. He's averaged 0.72. All of those minutes, obviously not with Randall though. But regardless, like let's say he just gets 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. It's really difficult to see where the minutes go if he doesn't play 28 to 30 minutes at least. Like we know that Thibodeau typically doesn't go too deep into his bench. So it would be pretty surprising to see some random guy that you don't even realize is on the team suddenly play 20 minutes. Thibodeau is just less likely to do that than other coaches are. If you give Burks like 32 to 36 minutes, you give Barrett like 36, you give Randall 40, give Bullock 36, you still end up getting like 28 to 30 minutes from Ntilikina. Could Bullock, Barrett, Randall all play 42 minutes and Ntilikina plays like 22? Like, yeah, that's possible. And I guess that's probably the most likely way that Ntilikina wouldn't play 28 or 30 minutes. But it's just so unusual to get a flat minimum guy on DraftKings that has the potential to be on the floor for 30 minutes. Even if he doesn't do that well, it's going to open it up for you to get to Julius Randle, to get to some of these other expensive guys that we like, to get to the Utah guys. So it's just a really good point per dollar play. There's a very good chance that he does at least well enough to justify that salary. If the ownership gets out of control in larger field tournaments, he's the kind of guy that you can try and kind of just steer clear from and hope that he does get like 18 fantasy points and that you can do better, with other options. But right now he's only projected for like 21% ownership. I think that I'll just kind of grin and bear it with Ntilikina and, get high upside guys in the rest of my lineup spots.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Barrett starts at the point. I'm just throwing it out there.
They could start because that would mean Burks starting basically, but then you're like, there's no scoring on that second unit.
Yeah. Oh no, there's no question that it would be ugly. When I look at Tom Thibodeau, like I think I mentioned to you the other day about just starting guy. Ntilikina is a veteran, but he's not really.
Yeah, but he was starting Ntilikina over quickly.
I know. So I understand that. Yeah, he got in foul trouble and then quickly got to start the next game. So that's what I'm saying. I think Ntilikina starts. I'm just not convinced that it's definitely going to be Ntilikina.
Yes. I will say if they start, if Ntilikina doesn't start, which would mean that they're going with Barrett, Burks, Bullock, Randall, Noel. If that's the case, I'm getting away from Ntilikina. Like I'm not doing the whole, he's coming off the bench, he gets increased usage thing. We're talking about Frank Ntilikina.
That's all I'm saying. Exactly right. That's what I'm saying. Like I need him to start so I can at least feel remotely confident that he plays 30 plus minutes.
Right. If he starts, I at least feel comfortable that Tom Thibodeau's game plan going in is to play Ntilikina a bunch of minutes. Right. If he comes off the bench, I assume his game plan going in is to run like a 6-man rotation.
Exactly. That's where I'm at as well. Darius Mills with the super chat says, finished top 3 in the single entry on FanDuel. 15K last night. Thanks to Awesemo. Great tools, great advice. Money time. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. All right. So let's run through this again. We got through Ntilikina. Julius Randle, he's just been outstanding. And you're going to see monster usage, monster potential assist, rebound opportunities from him today. Everything. When it comes to Barrett and it comes to Burks and it comes to Reggie Bullock, where do you land on them?
I like Burks here. His salary is kind of scary because he is expensive enough to where like he can disappoint pretty easily, but he's one of the only ball handlers on this team that is still available. So I expect him to get big minutes. I expect him to be productive with those minutes. He's played 100 minutes without Quickly, Rose, or Payton this year. He's averaged 1.21 DraftKings points per minute, 27% usage rate, 18.5% assist percentage. He's got a long track record as being someone who, maybe not the best NBA player, but is someone that can get it done from a fantasy standpoint when he has the ball in his hands. So I do like Burks. I think Bullock plays huge minutes. He's not someone that's likely to benefit though from anything other than just getting additional minutes. Like he's not someone that's going to create for himself. He's not going to create for other guys. You're not looking and saying, Quickly's out, Bullock's going to take on a bigger role. He's just going to be standing on the floor for more minutes and, maybe more balls will bounce to him and he'll knock down a couple more threes. But outside of just the minutes bump, you're not really getting a bump for Bullock there. And then RJ Barrett should take on a bigger role, as you've been saying, should get more playing time, played about 40 minutes last game, but also has a 28% usage rate without those guys on the floor. 12% rebounding percentage, 17% assist percentage. So I think that Randall, Barrett, and Burks are the guys that I am most confident in their fantasy points, like in their production. I think Ntilikina is the guy that I would look to for value, with the caveat, that I would want him to be starting. And then Bullock, I think, plays a lot of minutes, but it's just you need him to shoot really well.
All right. How could you not hit thumbs up after we just talked so much about Frank Ntilikina and Reggie Bullock? Like that video if you haven't done so yet. And subscribe, guys. Subscribe to the channel. It's huge for us. And it helps you as well because you always know when new content's dropping next. You ready to talk about New Orleans and Portland?
Yeah.
All right. So same matchup as last time. Awesome game last time out. 239.5 total in this one. Too fast. Everything about this game screams fantasy value. The problem is when you start to kind of dissect these teams, you're not getting a ton of anything out of Portland. And then you've got Zion and Ingram and then maybe a little Lonzo Ball on the Pelicans side. But despite this being a really fast-paced, projected high-scoring game, maybe there's not a whole lot to like. But I will say this much. When it comes to Zion Williamson, there are a couple things I really like. And I'm going to tell you what they are. First, he's played them twice this season. He's averaging 32 points, 50 DraftKings points. That's fine. But he's shooting 69% from within 3 feet of the basket. Like all of his shots come from there. That's a great percentage. Portland's allowing the 3rd highest field goal percentage at the rim, 6th most rebounds to their opponents, and the 9th most points in the paint this season. He's going to crush this front court led by Enes Kanter, Derek Jones, maybe Covington gets some minutes, or whoever else Terry Stotts decides to sacrifice on Thursday night. I know he's a bit expensive, but this could be one of those absolutely monster Zion games. I just don't see any way he can be stopped in this matchup.
Yeah, he was one of my stands kind of last slate. people didn't really get to him. And I love the matchup for all the reasons you said. They're also a team that gives up a lot of offensive rebounds, Portland that is. And Zion, while everyone points to him only averaging 7 to 8 rebounds per game, and it's not that he's a bad rebounder individually, and he does do a very good job of getting offensive rebounds, which is something he can take advantage of against Portland. It's just a really good spot for him. I think he is relatively expensive. I do think that it's a little bit different tonight because you do have Randall in basically a situation where he's playing point guard. So he's going to look a little bit better, but I expect you'll also see a lot of ownership going to Randall. Right now on DraftKings, we have 29% ownership going to Julius Randall. We only have 12 going to Zion Williamson. I don't think there's more than a 2-to-1 chance that Randall outscores Zion, especially when you factor in that salary. So the math, especially on DraftKings, isn't that cut and dry because you can, mix in a variety of guys. You can roster them together. You can do different stuff. But I do think that Zion it's one spot where if you have a chalkier team and you're debating between Randall or saving the money for Zion and upgrading somewhere else, going to Zion at lower ownership is a very high upside move.
Yeah. Rep says Zion was okay last game, though, not amazing. Listen, I get what you're saying with that after I talk about that, but this is just the probabilities thing, Adam. If the matchup is good, if the total is high, if you know that if we were to run this matchup 100 times, more times than not, Zion's going to have a really solid game. It's just the way it works. So
yeah, I mean, he also had 28 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds.
Yeah, I was going to say he wasn't. Was he stellar? No, but he still had almost 50 DraftKings points.
And he basically took a quarter off too. I think he finished in terms of fantasy production. I think if I remember right, because I was watching it semi closely, I think he had 21 fantasy points at the end of the first, and he went into halftime with 23.
Okay. So yeah, I feel pretty confident about it today. It doesn't mean he's going to have a big game, but the conditions are ripe for a solid effort. Talk to me about the rest of New Orleans. Brandon Ingram being one of them, 7,800 on FanDuel, and Lonzo Ball. I believe Lonzo's coming off a pretty strong game, right? Yeah, another solid effort from him. Back-to-back 40 fantasy point games.
Yeah, I think all of these guys are just strong tournament options, strong guys. They're strong plays in any format if you can get them in your lineup. They just don't stand out as the best point per dollar options, but there's enough value at other positions where you can afford to quote unquote overpay a little bit. Brandon Ingram, it is a good spot for him. He had a solid game last time out. Lonzo Ball, same thing. Eric Bledsoe was disappointing last game, and he's only averaged about 0.78 fantasy points per minute over the last month, but he has also averaged about 30 minutes per game. This is a good matchup for him. Josh Hart had a nice game last time out. We had talked about him on the show, but he's a good rebounding guard. He probably will play 29, 30 minutes, with JJ Redick out. And I think it sets up as a good matchup for him at a pretty cheap price tag at small forward as well.
All right. Is that it for New Orleans for you?
Mostly, yeah. So Steven Adams was someone that I thought was interesting going into last game. He dealt with a little bit of foul trouble, still played 25 minutes. I think he's kind of interesting just because of the same thing I said about Zion with the offensive rebounding. Potentially you can get some putbacks for Steven Adams. The problem is obviously that his playing time has been down in general lately, and he's not a high usage guy. But at 5,300 on DraftKings, I think that's a spot you can take some shots in tournaments.
So I was talking to you earlier today about Damian Lillard last game, and I know McCollum could play more minutes. This time he played 26 minutes, didn't close, but did play into the fourth. Dame played 22 minutes without him. So more than half of his minutes, he played 41 in regulation, were without CJ McCollum. He had a monster 50 points, 75 DraftKings point game. McCollum being back definitely doesn't help Damian Lillard, but I think there's still this misconception that now that McCollum's back, you just can't play Lillard anymore. He still has 80 fantasy point upside any night he takes the floor, especially against the Pels.
Yeah. So McCollum being back, and we talk about this a lot in situations like this, McCollum being back makes Lillard's median projection lower because he's going to lose usage in the minutes that he's playing alongside McCollum, but he's still going to have his minutes staggered with McCollum. It's still a good matchup, and Damian Lillard is still very capable of just taking over a game like he showed last game, like he showed for an entire week last year after CJ McCollum came back. It makes it so that point per dollar, he's not as good a play. And the other issue is that his salary has increased because of McCollum being out. So now you're getting him projected for fewer fantasy points per minute at the highest price tag we've seen. But that also in tournaments drives down ownership. And so that's why it's really important to keep range of outcomes in mind and ceilings in mind. CJ McCollum being back doesn't lower Damian Lillard's ceiling. He's still very capable of going out there and just scoring 40 or 50 actual points with or without McCollum. He's a little less likely to do it with McCollum, but it doesn't lower his ceiling. It's not like CJ McCollum is making Damian Lillard, go stand in the corner or something. You're still going to get Lillard doing everything. So in a really good matchup at really low ownership, he's still an appealing option in tournaments. If that ownership were to come up, like if everyone is saying, oh, CJ McCollum doesn't affect Lillard, I'll pay $11K, then it's a pretty easy spot to get away in tournaments. And that's where ownership just becomes really important when you're trying to think about the difference between median projections and upside, basically.
All right. Couldn't have said it better myself. What about the rest of Portland? No, McCollum probably going to be limited in his Cantor. I think on Fanduel, you can make an argument for him. He's getting some ownership over there. But the rest of this team, like Robert Covington has some upside. Once in a while he pops off, but he's not really cheap. Do you have any interest in non-Damian Lillard Blazers tonight?
Not too much. I think it's worth mentioning that Carmelo Anthony played 30 and a half minutes last game. Cantor didn't step on the floor in the fourth quarter. They basically went with Covington, mostly McCollum, Lillard, Melo, and Trent. So, maybe in tournaments, if you want to think that they're going to go with that same closing lineup, you can look to a $5,400 Melo. It's not something I'd rely on in cash games, though, because you certainly could get more minutes from Cantor. You also have Harry Giles probable, so that could mess up the front court rotation a little bit for the Blazers. But nothing that really stands out. I do think that maybe CJ McCollum's only 7,400 on DraftKings. Like, I don't know how many minutes he plays, but if he were to get 30 to 32, that's not a terrible salary for him. Against New Orleans, it's obviously risky. It's not something I would trust, but that is a pretty decent salary.
So if you haven't heard of them, you're hearing about them now, and you see it right in the top right side of your screen, right? Where it says the stock market has officially met fantasy sports -forms. That's Jock Market, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. It's a beautiful site. It's a beautiful app. If you haven't, who do I sound like that? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. If you haven't heard, they're tearing the fantasy sports world into a stock exchange. There's no need to wait until the end of the game anymore to make money. Okay. They allow you, Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of every night. You got daily markets for basketball, baseball, football, basketball, NHL, and PGA, and you can make real money every hour, down to the minute, down to the second of any game or match. And if you use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, you can buy, sell, or hold them during the game based on your analysis. Download the app, right? Get started and use our exclusive Awesemo promo. It's AWESEMO 20, Awesemo 20 for a $20 bonus on your first deposit at Jock Market. And if you stick around after Live Before Lock today, we're giving away $100 on tonight's Jock Market show. All right, you're pissed off about the Top Shot drop. Oh, they delayed it. It's never going to happen. Well, here's some free money. If you can't get it there, $100 on the show tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, immediately following Live Before Lock. So tune in and find out how you can win there. In order to be eligible, all you have to do is to have made a deposit in the Jock Market before that. So make the deposit now if you haven't already, and then tune in, check out how you can win. Jock Market, download the app today and use that promo code Awesemo20 when you do to get a $20 bonus on your first deposit. All right, 2 games to go. Minnesota and Phoenix. We'll get to this one, Adam. The Phoenix Suns are probably going to smoke arguably the worst team in the league. They're 10.5-point favorites, 231.5-point total. But we'll start with the Timberwolves. Is there anything you want to get to here?
I mean, I think Cat obviously deserves a mention just because he's good. And he's cheap, like 9,400 on DraftKings is a good price point for him, but still going to be difficult to prioritize when you have, Julius Randle at 10K running point, when you have that Blazers and Pelicans game that's going to take up some salary when you have Utah. So I think more of a secondary option for me. Same can be said for Anthony Edwards, who has about a 31 to 32% usage rate without Russell and Malik Beasley playing big minutes, but it is a tough matchup against Phoenix. It's not the most appealing price tag either.
All right. And that's
Ricky Rubio also has been playing a lot better lately. I don't love 5,800 for him. I don't like the matchup, but I think it is at least worth mentioning that he's looked a lot more like the guy that played for the Suns last year than the guy that played for the Timberwolves the first half of the season.
Yeah, I gave a pretty good look to Rubio as well. I think he's just a fine secondary option, last guy in type of play. On the Phoenix side, Chris Paul By the way, someone mentioned why we talk about Fanduel so much. I always thought we talked about Draftkings a lot more than Fanduel, but when there's good salaries on a certain site, you got to talk about it. And Paul is below 7,000 on Fanduel today, $7,700 on Draftkings. You also have DeAndre Ayton, who I actually want to start with here, Adam. He's getting some ownership right now. And if we refresh to see if he's still where he was earlier in the day, because he was definitely up there, particularly at the center position earlier in the day on DraftKings. But on FanDuel, he's coming in around 20% right now. Or no, DraftKings, he's at 20%. My worry is that just the minutes keep trending in the wrong direction, even in the blowouts, though. It's not just in these, even in competitive games. He might lose a couple minutes in a blowout, but there are times where he just doesn't play in the fourth quarter at all, and the game's close.
He has a good backup, and that's a problem for centers. Dario Saric has played well this year, and there's been plenty of times where Saric plays well enough that he just stays on the floor and Ayton doesn't come back. I do think that the salary has gotten to a point where it's probably a little bit lower than it should be, because there's still going to be games where you get 32, 33 minutes from Ayton. Like if you look at their game against Memphis on, I guess, Monday, he played 28.5 minutes, but he sat the final 4.5 minutes of a blowout. Like if you assume that he closes that game out, he's still getting those 32, 33 minutes. It's just that he's going to get them a little bit less consistently because he does have to deal with Dario Saric taking minutes from him occasionally. He's also not been as good a fantasy producer this year as he was last year. But again, the salary being where it is, I think is a pretty good price point. With the ownership, as you said, with the ownership where it is, it's a good point per dollar play, but there are red flags here. The minutes, like you said, the risk of Dario Saric. Karl-Anthony Towns also has been, by most accounts, doing better defensively this year than he has in the past. So, not that Minnesota as a whole is a very good matchup. And I don't mean that it's not a good spot for Ayton because, as we've talked about before, I don't care a whole lot about individual defense, but it's not, the Karl-Anthony Towns Ole defense that, we've seen in previous years.
All right. Clint Capella is active tonight, so no John Collins. What are we doing with Paul? What are we doing with Booker or Mikal Bridges? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, love the FanDuel price tag on Paul. DraftKings, it's good as well, but not nearly as appealing on the sub 7K on FanDuel. Paul's averaged about 1.15 DraftKings points per minute this year. Should play 32, 33 minutes if this game's competitive. Really good matchup against Minnesota. Everything looks good there. Same can be said for Booker, who we have seen his per minute production creeping up after a slow start to the season. He's still scoring dependent because Paul does so much in terms of playmaking and assists, but a 30+% usage rate for Booker, even in the games that he has played with Chris Paul, still has, 17 to 19% assist percentage, kind of a poor man's Bradley Beal as far as what you can expect from, a fantasy standpoint. He's a high upside scorer that is capable of going out there and dropping 30 to 40 real points. You're not going to get a ton in the way of peripherals, but you'll get enough to add normally, 8 to 10 points to his score. So it's a good matchup for him. It's a decent price tag. You'd feel better if you were getting more in the way of peripherals, but he does still have a high ceiling.
Okay. Anything else from Phoenix?
Not really. Mikal Bridges as the last guy in is fine just because you're expecting 32 to 34 minutes if the game's close and he's relatively cheap.
Okay. Let's wrap it up. Charlotte and the Lakers. And then immediately after this show, what's up next. It's the Live Before Lock show, plus the Jock Market show right after that. Greg Ehrenberg and Eric Lindquist are taking you up till 7:30. Then you got the MMA strategy show at 8 p.m. with Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat Rogers. And then at 9:30, it's the late slate, Swap and Sweat. You got Spags and EMAC, everything you need, every sport. We got you right here on the Awesemo YouTube channel. What are we doing with the Charlotte Hornets, Adam?
Ignoring them.
All right, fair enough.
I'm double checking FanDuel salaries right now, but they look a little bit better there. 7,300 for Hayward's fine. But in general, I mean, it's the same thing we had talked about either yesterday or the day before, whenever the last time they played was. They're just getting healthy now at elevated price points in a tough matchup against the Lakers. LaMelo Ball's got a high ceiling, but he's certainly priced for it. Gordon Hayward's the guy that I would get to the easiest here at 7,300 on both sites. He's averaged about 1.05 fantasy points per minute this year. You should get 35, 36 minutes from him here. Certainly not a priority for me, but I think that he looks like a better option than anything else.
So we wrap it up with the LA Lakers, LeBron James. By the way, Caruso was out and now he's active, which definitely doesn't help THT. Break down this Lakers squad for me, starting with LeBron. And if you want to hit on Harrell and everybody else here, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about LeBron. I think everybody knows what to expect at this point. 1.45 to 1.5 fantasy points per minute without Davis this year. Solid matchup against the Hornets. Nothing really to be concerned about there. Montrezl Harrell, I like here. He kind of went through that funk where he was playing really poorly, even with Anthony Davis out, but he's played better recently. You've seen the minutes trend up. He played 32 minutes, 33 minutes, about 25 minutes in a blowout, and then 29 minutes against Minnesota last game. Now you get you get a Charlotte front court that's not particularly imposing in terms of size with Zeller, Biyombo, PJ Washington. So I would expect Harrell to get close to 30 minutes again. He's been extremely productive overall this season without Davis, about 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Still an affordable price tag on Harrell. So I think LeBron and Harrell are the two guys I feel the best about here. Dennis Schroeder certainly in play in tournaments. Same can be said for a $4,300 Markieff Morris and a $3,800 KCP, where you're just sort of hoping that they shoot well and that they're a little bit lower owned value than guys like Ntilikina or Chase and Randall. As you mentioned with Horton Tucker, Caruso coming back should make Horton Tucker not a good option. Most likely you're just going to get Horton Tucker getting like 12, 13 minutes and Caruso getting 20 to 22.
All right. Final thoughts on this slate. Wrap it up for us, Adam.
Large field tournaments, I don't think you should be I think you should be willing to take risks getting away from some of the more popular options. Not talking about guys like the Utah players that are in a great spot or, LeBron James or guys like that, but like talking about value plays like Chase and Randall, like Frank Ntilikina. I like those plays. And if you're able to get contrarian somewhere else in your lineup, then by all means, just take the good point per dollar value. But there's a lot of value on this slate that is very unlikely to score 30 fantasy points. They're likely to be good point per dollar plays, but don't be afraid of being kind of creative and trying to find ways around that, as long as you can do it without losing too much in the way of ceiling.
All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks as always for hanging out, guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by Jock Market. Later, boys.
Hello. Long time no see. Yep. It is the Awesemo Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Jock Market. They're going to be doing some giveaways later on the show, so you're going to stick around, find a little bit of information about that. A little tease there, as we call it in radio land. But also, Eric and I are going to be going by an extra 30 minutes tonight, doing the 30-minute Jock Market show. Their IPO pricing closes right at 7:30, so we're going to have 30 minutes after the show for Eric and I to try to bid against everybody who's paying attention in the YouTube chat. Probably lose out on some of those bids because that's usually what happens. Eric and I are on the air, and it's pretty hard to keep up with the bidding process while we're talking, and people just overbidding us, knowing who we're on, and us just giving out that information. So good way to get a little bit of an edge over Eric and I as we talk about what it is that we're going to be doing. Eric, what's going on with you? And we also have to talk about, to start, Clint Capella, big news that just came out. How are you handling that situation? Yeah, I'm going to play Clint Capella, I think, is kind of part of what I'm looking at. What I find really interesting, too, is that it's not going to be a Kungwu who's going to be backing up. It's going to be Nathan Knight again. He was a value guy that I thought we could go to. However, I think Capella is going to still probably play a couple more minutes than I would have expected. He's going to play more minutes than John Collins. Like, his rates won't cut into Nathan Knight, or they should cut into Nathan Knight in a different way, is what I'm trying to say, that I did such a poor job of doing. But what it comes down to is, like, Nathan Knight isn't going to be in play for me. It's pretty much going to be Clint Capella or bust. John Collins is now just overpriced for his situation. So stay away from Collins. I'm going to have a smattering of Capella on both sites, and just probably see where the field ends up at and come in maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, so Capella, at least right now for his ownership, is my favorite center play. Not that he's my highest owned center. Moses Brown actually is at the moment, but at least relative to what the ownership is on these guys, Capella's the guy that I'm most overweight on. Right now on Fanduel, he's projecting for 7% ownership. On Draftkings, he's projecting for 12% ownership. I have Capella projected for over 40 fantasy points today. There is a little bit of risk here with him coming back from a heel injury. Maybe he's going to be limited a little bit, but it's not like he's a guy who plays a whole lot of minutes for the season. I mean, Clint Capella is playing 29 minutes per game, still averages over 40 fantasy points in those minutes. Favorable matchup for him against the Thunder. Do you think that Capella is going to be limited at all? Because if we think he plays the normal minutes, then he's underpriced and way underowned. Remember, we had, was it a month ago? Capella was priced over 10,000 on FanDuel.
Well, what would be the minutes number that would get you off of him? Because he's gone 28, 27 his last two and absolutely smashed value in both of those. So, even if the floor were at 24, he's viable. If he gets up to 28, he's a smash. Obviously, both of those, the Sacramento game I know for sure was a blowout. The last one we saw Capella in, which was on the 13th. And so 27 minutes that he played there, 28 up against Toronto on the 11th. So it wasn't that long ago. It was left heel soreness, so it is a lower body injury, but I'm not a doctor. If he's good to play, I expect him to be going at least 25, 26 minutes in the spot with upside for more that we've seen him get to the 30s. So I'm really not terribly concerned. And I'm happy to go over the field. I'm glad that you're on him too.
Yeah, not a doctor. Your credentials were misleading to me. I thought that was the only reason you were on here.
Ben Rossa is the doctor, if I do recall. Ben Rossa, the prop doctor.
Well, you're an actor. You could at least pretend to be one, or at least the thing. I mean, you're at a Holiday Inn Express right now, if I'm not mistaken. So that is how the commercial goes.
Yeah, I'm out here fighting COVID. That's my job, and so I'm just staying in the place, the accommodations that they gave me. That's what it is.
So some of the other players that I think here we need to address, I agree with you. John Collins, not in play now. Somebody asked about Danilo Gallinari, also not in play for me now that we know that Clint Capella's in. I think we're going to see more traditional lineups with Clint Capella and John Collins on the court together. That means a little bit less playing time for Gallinari. Also, in general, Collins has not played all that well when sharing the court with Capella this year. So unless we're going to see Capella play 25 minutes or something like that, or really be limited, I don't think that he's going to be an option. Do you feel any differently about guys like John Collins or Danilo Gallinari?
Yeah, Danilo, part of it is that we've seen the price now come up for his situation, which is no longer his situation. So that's just kind of having a little bit of price sensitivity. Could he spike a 3-point upside? Could he play well, get extended run? Yeah, sure. Could we see them just playing him at the 3 a little bit more? Yeah, absolutely. But not at this current price tag over on both sites. I'm just going to find other places to go. I'm kind of freaking out a little bit about what this Terrence Ross news means. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing with small forward here on FanDuel at the moment. But yes, I'm not getting to any Gallinari right now.
Yeah, so let's hit to some of these super chats that we just got. Then we could hit on the Magic news. And then we could go to some of the guys that we're actually rostering as of now at each position. Yeah. First, from our friend Anthony Davis, always a regular in the chat, and we appreciate you. He's asking, help, is playing any combination of Jazz shooting guards together good? It is for me. I think that Jordan Clarkson's one of the best shooting guard players on the slate. Same goes for Donovan Mitchell. And then even if we go over to small forward, I think Joe Ingles is one of the best plays as well. And then same question for Bullock and Burks. Bullock, not somebody I'm getting to a ton today, but I am with Alec Burks. I think that he's basically going to be forced into a big role. I know we see Tibbs do all kind of weird things with his rotations, but I just don't see what other option he has tonight other than to give Alec Burks a considerable amount of playing time. And we consider that Quickly is out. Derrick Rose is out. Alfred Payton is out. So of the Jazz guys, are any of them that you don't like as a play? And then same goes for Bullock and Burks. And then maybe as a follow-up to that, what are your two favorite shooting guard plays for the slate?
My two favorite shooting guard plays are Clarkson and Burks on FanDuel. I do like into quite a bit of Clarkson here, 5,200, just not priced necessarily for a situation. I am curious. Again, Joe Ingles is a guy that I understand the play. I understand going to him down there at 4,400. But I'm just kind of a little bit lighter on the field. I expected when I was looking at his rates today that they would pop a little bit more than they do. Obviously, we're going to see a couple extra minutes here, but there's enough other spots that I can go that I can't play everybody unless I'm just going to take an overweight stance on every single one of these Utah Jazz players, which I feel like is a little suboptimal. I'm kind of taking a lighter weight approach on him and kind of like riding with Clarkson as the guy who can maybe spike a little bit more of that upside. What's strange about him too, though, is he goes from a 1.12 DraftKings points per player, per minute player with Conley on the floor, and it actually goes down to 1.06. Talked a little bit on the tip-off show how I thought that might be a little bit of a result of the Jazz already being a team that shares the basketball well. But again, you're going to see a surplus of minutes for Clarkson. That's kind of the main reason that I'm targeting in on him.
Yeah, so the reason that his points per minute goes down is because he plays more minutes alongside Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and Joe Ingles. So he's, instead of just playing minutes on the second unit, he's also seeing minutes with the first unit. But still, I don't find that to be a concern though, because we're also giving him, 5 to 6 more minutes in this situation. So the 10th of a fantasy point less becomes less of a concern for me. It is something I noticed as well, but maybe it's also a little bit of bias on my part. It's like, I like Jordan Clarkson. And then it's like, I'm just finding a reason to be like, I don't care about these numbers. But I think the logic there makes sense.
Yeah, I'm right there with it too. I will say one guy that I am lighter on, I think, than the field as well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's 7,900. He grades out really well over by Alex, but I don't know. I'm having a little bit of pushback. I'm just finding it tougher to get to him when you do have values down at Clarkson and Burks. I'm just curious what those minutes are going to look like. I mean, we've seen, obviously it was a blowout against Chicago, so 28 minutes there. 34 and 33 are fine, but when shooting guard is like such a great spot to be going and saving money on this slate, I'm finding it hard to go spend up for him. If I'm going to spend up for somebody, I might want to go to Beal, who obviously can pair well with a lot of those Utah guys. If that game stays close, you could have a whole fountain of guys to go to as a grouping. And then Beal just gives you maybe a little different look. So I'm a little lighter on Shai than I was expecting to, because he's somebody that I get to a lot on most slates. I'm just kind of upping the projection on Beal and getting to a little bit more of him. What say you on him?
On Beal or SGA?
Both.
I have, and for FanDuel or DraftKings, because that's the thing that's different.
FanDuel, yeah. FanDuel specifically. Shai, his price, I think maybe we're on different pages, but I think it's a little out of control up at 9K on DK.
Yeah, so on FanDuel, I don't like Beal, and I do like SGA. However, I don't have as much exposure to SGA as the field does. Part of that is because of how high I am on some of the Utah Jazz guys. I would much prefer to roster Donovan Mitchell than SGA, and then going down, if I'm saving money with guys, Jordan Clarkson, Alec Burks, I agree with you. Those are my two favorite shooting guard plays on FanDuel. So that has me underweight SGA. On DraftKings, I like Beal more than I do on FanDuel. Difference in price tags there. Beal is only 9,100 on DK, so I think that he's more of a viable play than he is on FanDuel. And SGA at 9,000, I just think there's no reason to roster him on DraftKings.
Great.
All right, we got a super chat here from Darius Mills, and just thanking us. He played Larry Nance as a pivot last night, ended up finishing top 3 in single entry. Yeah, nice. Larry Nance last night, I didn't understand the ownership on him. We don't need to talk about yesterday's slate too much, but like Larry Nance just oddly picked up no ownership at like just a ridiculously cheap price tag after playing 37 minutes of the game before. Yeah, definitely happy to see you doing well, man. That is much appreciated with the super chat. And let's hit on this Magic news now that we got as we were addressing some of the other things. We have a quick note here also that also just came across for the Thunder. Lou Dort and Teo Maledon will play, and Svi Mykhailiuk, he will play limited minutes for the Thunder. This will be his debut with OKC after getting traded from the Pistons. So no real major changes there. For the Magic now, this is my least favorite type of injury update. Terrence Ross will attempt to play Thursday. He's just going to try. He's going to see what happens, right? He's going to try. Aaron Gordon and Evan Fournier will start. So what do you make of this news and the will try to play injury designation? How do you feel about that one?
Like the absolute stone cold worst thing that you could read, especially a guy that, again, I don't want to play Chesson Randle. I really, really don't want to play Chesson Randle, but you could get 30 something minutes of him playing point. Terrence Ross allows me to just have flat out zero Chesson Randle, but I would have to have a little bit of interest with Terrence Ross out of there. Again, yeah, Evan Fournier can do some random ball handling, but Terrence Ross has been pretty functional in that role this year. I would want to be able to go to a little bit of Ross if you were to like roll it. I know it would give you a little different build, 5,900 over on FanDuel. I just hate reading that kind of an update. It makes it seem like he's really maybe labored or struggling. I don't know. It's a terrible way of putting that in a way where I would want to fire him up the way that I was kind of expecting to. But yeah, it would obviously secure minutes for a guy like Chesson Randle, who I just don't want to play. I don't want to play him or Ntilikina. But now, after hearing Adam and Lofty talk a little bit about Frankie Smokes and just where else those minutes could go to, I kind of agree with that. I was really kind of looking at this game. Obviously, it's 20 points lower than every other game on the slate, but good Lord, how do you possibly get in a spot where you can't what's happening over there, Jordan? I just saw your face. What just happened? Yeah, for me, for the most part, I've got to be able to have a little bit of Randle in a result where Ross doesn't go. So obviously just waiting on that news. What about you?
Yeah, so this is just such a bad matchup on paper, the Knicks playing against the Magic. I have a decent amount of exposure to the Knicks too, because it's so hard with all those guards out, but it's terrifying even as a 206.5 total. So I don't like Vucevic. I know that he's projected fairly well by Alex, but I'd much rather get to Julius Randle on Draftkings. And then on FanDuel, when I'm looking at some of the options at center, I would rather save money and go a little cheap with Karl Anthony Towns. I know Cat hasn't been great recently, but going forward, I still have to think that Karl Anthony Towns is going to be the better fantasy producer than Nikola Vucevic. And the other thing too is that if we look at the historical pricing for Vuce, which I always like to use as a benchmark for what to expect from him, earlier in the season, when this team was totally healthy, he was priced in the 8K range. Now this team's finally getting healthy again. Aaron Gordon is back, and I don't expect Aaron Gordon to play full minutes, but when he's on the court, he's going to take some touches away from Vucevic. The last game that we had Aaron Gordon active for, even though it was only 15 minutes, Vucevic had a 27.7% usage rate. And even if that seems like not a big deal, that's the lowest usage he's had in a month. So I definitely think there's a correlation there. When Aaron Gordon's on the court, we're going to see less touches go to Vucevic. His price to me is right around its apex, and I think it's going to be cheaper going forward. So when I look at him on FanDuel compared to some of these other options, I'd rather roster Towns. I'd rather roster Gobert going up against Washington. I'd rather roster Capella. And then if I'm going cheap, there's guys like Moses Brown that I think are in play, and I'm just not finding myself getting to Vucevic on either site. So I think that just the pace of play and these guys coming back, it makes him a very unappealing option. Are you getting to Vucevic at all?
I was getting to an absolute ton, and somehow this news is broke completely against that constantly. Between Fournier, between Ross, yeah, I'm probably going to be lighter than I was anticipating. He was going to be my highest center play on this entire slate. I'm kind of glad sometimes when you do the earlier show, you kind of get left with those takes and they change so much leading up to lock. And I think this is kind of a perfect scenario for that. Like Vooch 10K, if you were going to have no Fournier, no Ross, no Gordon, obviously I think he was going to be the considerable play. I still think that there is upside there. It's not like Vooch doesn't have upside in any spot, but at 10K now on FanDuel, I am significantly lighter than I was before. I'm actually probably just barely over the field, whereas before I was about 3x that 11.3%.
All right, so we're going to get into talking about all the positions by position like we normally do, talk about our favorite plays at each position. But first, guys, today's show is sponsored by Jock Market. Jock Market, we're looking at fantasy sports in a different way, right? We're not just rostering players based on price tags, nothing else. There's nothing involved than you pick the guys you want and you bid on them, right? We got some IPO pricing, and later on, 7 o'clock, 7:30 time slot, Eastern time. Eric's on West Coast. Nobody can do the math to figure out what that is, right? Nobody knows
Make believe time.
Yeah. The world revolves around New York. Everybody operates on Eastern Standard Time. So at least my time, 7 p.m., 7:30 Eastern time. Eric and I will be doing a 30-minute show talking about Jock Market. And once again, it's just a different way to play fantasy sports. it works like a stock market. 4 players, you bid on them, and then depending on where they finish in terms of their total fantasy points at the end of the night and how that ranks against other players, that converts into real cash. And then how you can get involved, go download the Jock Market app. If you use the Awesemo promo code Awesemo20, you get a $20 deposit, a $20 bonus on your first deposit. And then another thing too, we have projections up on the site. So if you look and you go like, I don't know what a fair IPO price is, don't worry about it, because Alex has projections up on the site with projected fair IPO pricing for everybody. And then also Jock Market is giving away $100 on tonight's Jock Market show, which, like I said, starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to immediately follow the NBA Live Before Lock show. So tune into that and you can find out how you could win. We're going to be doing some trivia, tip it a little bit, but something along those lines. But to be eligible to win in our contest we're going to be doing later, you do have to have made a deposit into Jock Market before. So if you've not done that right now, download the app, make a deposit, and play along with us later. So that is everything we have to say about Jock Market, and stick around 42 minutes. That will be what Eric and I are doing. So how about we get into some of these plays for tonight, Eric? Starting at the point guard position, here's something I think everybody's going to want to talk about. I know this was a hot topic in the Slack chat before. Frank Ntilikina, cheap price, bad fantasy producer. All the guards are out for the Knicks. Did you get to him at a decent clip?
Yeah, I don't like it. I really don't. I don't want to do this. This is probably the most disturbed I've been with myself in quite some time. 3K though is 3K. It's hard for 3K to kill you, especially when it's somewhat owned. It goes one of two ways here. Like, either you kick yourself because obviously Frank Ntilikina is a horrible fantasy point per minute monster, opposite of monster is what I'm getting at. But God, it just seems so hard for him not to get 28 minutes here now that I'm looking at it with a lot of these situations. He's going to be on the floor. You can just run into the ball a couple times and possibly pick up a few of those stats. Yeah, 3K of him. I'm right now at 34%, so I'm heavier than the field, which I never imagined in a million years saying last night. So what's kind of your stance there? Because him and Burks are my highest owned Knicks, and it's really not close.
I have a lot of Randall also. All 3 of those guys I think are strong plays. I have a decent amount of RJ Barrett as well. We'll talk about him when we get to the forward position. But it's just hard to stay away from. There are so few guys who are active for the Knicks. I only have them. Let me bring this up really quick. We've seen Tibbs be a little more liberal with his minutes as of late. But today I only have Obi Toppin in the rotation, and only for 5 minutes. And I have Kevin Knox playing 10 minutes. And beyond that, it's Taj Gibson, Reggie Bullock, Nerlens Noel, Frank Ntilikina, Alec Burks, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle. So I think that of these guys, Randle, Barrett, Burks, Ntilikina, and Bullock, I think all of them are going to play massive minutes tonight. So that's making me look past the low 205 and a half total, just because it's hard for me to ignore guys who, other than Randle, are all relatively cheap. Like, Ntilikina is terrible as a fantasy producer, but you're telling me he's going to play 34 minutes at min price, and I don't think he totally destroys you. I mean, maybe he scores, 15 fantasy points or something like that in those minutes, or I'm just wrong about the minutes. But
he's 3K, so he can't destroy you.
And there's not a whole lot of other, cheap plays that I really like a lot. Although with that said, did you see the Magic starting lineup? Because that's gonna alter some stuff now.
No, I did not yet.
All right, now I think you're gonna be happy with this. I think there's no reason for you to be downtrodden, because Chase and Randall starting at point guard for the Orlando Magic. They are rolling out a starting lineup of
Randall, Fournier, Gordon, Aminu, Vooch is what I'm looking at right now.
Yes. Yeah. So now that Chase and Randall is starting at point guard, what are your expectations for him?
God, I mean, here's the thing. I didn't expect Terrence Ross to start either way. Like, he wasn't going to start in this spot. He's been coming off the bench. That's a spot that they functionally like to bring him in at. But it does secure the fact that Randall is the starter here, and we're going to be waiting on this Terrence Ross news. And if he gets ruled out, you're going to get crazy minutes from Chess and Randall at a very, very discounted rate. Right now, I mean, obviously he's at 3% on Fanduel. I expect that to be coming up a little bit as he sits at 3,600 there. Between him and Frank Ntilikina, you're obviously getting a huge ownership disparity between the two. We'll see how close it gets as we get closer to lock, but I would be more inclined to play more Randall should we get news that Ross, and again, he's 100 more, so you can make the swap if you want to get to Ntilikina if Ross is in, but Randall is viable now. Like I do find Randall to be viable.
All right, so we have a super chat right here from Santana Martin Jr. He wants to know first 3 in for a DraftKings single entry. So let's look at it this way. Who are your 3 favorite overall plays on DraftKings? I haven't adjusted for the Chase and Randall news, but I'm going to assume that for me, it is now going to be Chase and Randall, Alec Burks, and Frank Ntilikina as my 3 favorite plays on DraftKings. Although actually, probably Joe Ingles ahead of Frank Ntilikina, because my exposure to Ntilikina is going to come down with the Randall news. So yeah, I'm going to officially say Joe Ingles, Alec Burks, and Chase and Randall.
Yeah, Alec Burks, Jordan Clarkson, even at 6,100. Just if you're doing a single entry, I like going up and getting away from Ingles for that. And then Chess and Randall, I just ran another crunch, putting him in for 32 minutes. I had him in for 28. 32, just kind of give him a little bit of a boost there. Obviously, if Ross is in, it allows me to cut back a little bit, but I'm getting him in a crazy, crazy high number of lineups right now.
Yeah, and then still, boy, that Terrence Ross news. He's going to try to play. Do you think we're going to find out before the game if he's in or out, or is it just going to be a thing like he steps on the court for 5 minutes and he's like, guys, I could do it. Like what's the deal with that?
I like the thumbs up to the camera. Yeah. That was nice. I'm pretty sure we're not going to know probably before lock. I'm kind of accepting that we're not going to know until after. And if we get it before, roses, awesome, great. But I'm right now kind of full systems go Chesson. I'm going to put him out right now. I'm going to take Ross, take him out, and just kind of allocate it that way. There's not really a lot with that news. I keep thinking about it. I feel like because of his price point at 5,900, it's just not a necessity on this slate getting to him on FanDuel. Sure, would I like to get him at a lower ownership? Absolutely. This isn't a phenomenal game environment like we've seen at other spots for them. And he's not near the minimum. He's not a guy who's giving you savings to put other studs into your lineup. So I'm going to be light on him there. 6,700. I don't even have him in my pool right now on DK anyway. So he's not even a talking point for me there. But on FanDuel specifically, I'm just going to take him out. And if I need to, is there somebody else? RJ Barrett's a direct pivot. So if I need to get a little bit, I can look at some of my lineups and just make a 1v1 swap on a few of them.
All right, pay up options now at the point guard position. We have Damian Lillard, we have Trae Young, and Russell Westbrook. Of the 3 of them, who are you prioritizing? I'll say for me, it is currently Trae Young. Damian Lillard, I think that now that CJ McCollum's back, even if it's limited minutes from McCollum, and even though Lillard just absolutely went bonkers in the fourth quarter the other night against the Pelicans, ended up scoring 50 points in total for the game, I still have to think going forward, McCollum is going to take away some shot attempts, some usage, some ball handling duties away from Damian Lillard. Russell Westbrook, matchup against the Jazz. I don't usually like to make a habit of targeting anybody going up against Utah. So for me, Trae Young is the guy that I'm getting to. Also, 8,800 for him on FanDuel is a really favorable price tag. DraftKings, a little bit less favorable at 9,900, but still somebody I'm a little bit overweight to the field on. So who are you prioritizing of those expensive point guards?
Yeah, Trae Young is my highest own on both sites, I believe, for the top end, excuse me, because obviously I'm getting Randall and Ntilikina over on DraftKings. They're going to eat up a little bit more here on this next run. Over on FanDuel, Trae Young, 8,800, you're getting a discount from there. I'm in the same boat. My entire slate starter, I had a part that I basically kind of figured out whether or not I made a mistake by fading Damian Lillard the other night. I do like Adam's point that it doesn't affect his ceiling so much. Would it really surprise you if Damian Lillard smashed in this spot? No. But I also think that the value is a little hairier than we had 2 nights ago. And maybe I should have been higher on Dame just simply from that result. But now he's at 11K on DK, 10-4 on FanDuel. Yeah, you can get to a little bit. I'm right now below the field. I'm at like 8%. I'm probably going to get a little bit more on my next run because I will have pairings of Randall that is going to be kind of mixed in as well. So that does give me a little bit of savings. But I kind of like going to Russ. Again, part of it is pairing him or Beal with some of these Utah pieces, just hoping that game does stay competitive, stay close, and you can kind of like get all of the fantasy goodness in one from it. But Trae Young really up against Oklahoma City. There's no resistance. 1.27 FanDuel points per minute on the season. Just phenomenal value on this slate at 8,800. Somebody that I think you've been high on for a string of games here. Obviously hasn't produced the last two, but against Houston, I'm going to write that one off. And against Cleveland, they just completely ran him out of the gym.
Yeah, I mean, just the price has gotten to be a little too cheap on him, particularly on FanDuel. Like I said, the DraftKings price is more accurate, but I mean, we're looking at $1,100 price difference between the two. Other point guards, who are you getting to at a meaningful amount? The chalk of the slate, at least for FanDuel, is Chris Paul, who's right now by far projecting the most ownership at the point guard position. And then DraftKings is a little bit more spread out, at least just in terms of guys that just have point guard eligibility. We do have Jordan Clarkson is fairly popular on DraftKings, but not quite to the same extent as FanDuel. And it's also a little more complicated because guys have dual position eligibilities. So starting with Chris Paul on FanDuel, did you end up going over or underweight to the field on what is a pretty significant amount of ownership?
Yeah, I'm under by a little bit. I'm at 24%. He's right now coming in at 34%. I like the spot against Minnesota, don't get me wrong, but like Minnesota hasn't actually been giving up a crazy amount of fantasy points to the point guard position this season. So I'm a little bit lighter just from terms like 34% is a large number on Chris Paul. Sure, against Ricky Rubio, against this Minnesota team. I get it. I understand it. But I think that now we do have some savings on that bottom end. I can get up to Trae Young and not really stress out too much on it. I'm actually over the field on your guy from the other day, Ricky Rubio, who's been just so consistent of late. Only played 29, 28 minutes the last two, played pretty darn well, starting to really kind of like find a little bit of his footing. He was just struggling earlier in the season here. I like getting a little bit over top of him at 5,400. I don't know where that ownership, I mean, right now, 15%. I'm getting to about 20. Let's see, where is it down here? 22% at the moment. I think that that's a perfectly fine spot to go to as well. But yeah, Chris Paul specifically, just a little bit lighter. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or another. I was surprised that number got up that high.
Yeah, so the key to Ricky Rubio, and he's a little more expensive than I liked him the other day, but I mean, some of the points still remain the same, which is Jarrett Culver's out, and the big one that I was talking about the other day, and it's one of those injuries that does not seem significant, but ends up being significant when you project out the minutes, is Jordan McLaughlin being out in the health and safety protocols. Without him on the court, and also no Jarrett Culver, they just don't have a backup court point guard when we also have D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley out. So this has just kind of forced Ricky Rubio to play bigger minutes in competitive games. Obviously, the biggest risk here is just the Wolves getting stomped by the Suns and then Ricky Rubio not having to play the fourth quarter. But yeah, if the game stays competitive, I think he plays well over 30 minutes and probably ends up being one of the better value plays on FanDuel. It's just really a question of how competitive does the game stay. And 10.5 point spread, that does indicate some blowout risk. But I mean, it's the same spread that we have for the Utah-Washington game. And it's just hard to totally avoid these spots on a 6-game slate.
Great points. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anybody else you want to talk about a point guard before we move over to shooting guard?
I just hate myself right now. Chesson Randall, Frank Ntilikina on DraftKings. What happened to today? Because I felt so good about this game coming into today. I thought no matter how the news broke, like if Quickly were going to play, we just played Quickly. If, all the news broke towards Orlando, I wouldn't have interest in there. But now Randall in the starting lineup and Ross trying to play. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, too, it was something that you mentioned really briefly when we talked about Chesson Randall, is he has fairly secure minutes as a starter, right? It doesn't mean he has to play 32, 34 minutes, but as long as he starts, we have to expect at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 to 26 minutes. And on a slate where we're kind of lacking value, or at least guys where we're like the value players like Frank Ntilikina, there's nobody we're overly confident in, and just somebody who's cheap starting a point guard. I think it makes sense to go to him. And we really have no clue how Terrence Ross is going to hold up today.
And there's like, if the game blows out, it's not like they're going to take Randall off the floor more than likely. Like, what else would they do in that spot? Like he's got blowout security, I think, too, that maybe some of the other pieces from Orlando don't even have.
All right. So moving over to the shooting guards now, we've kind of talked about a bunch of these guys already, but I think we could rehash it at this point. Top overall shooting guard plays: Jordan Clarkson, Alec Burks. a little different because Alec Burks isn't a shooting guard on DraftKings. He's a small forward, but starting with Fanduel, at least Alec Burks, Jordan Clarkson, there's your chalk. Play them in cash games. I think it's pretty simple. Go heavy on both of those guys.
Yep, agreed. I've got 76% Burks. I'm playing 50 lineups Fanduel, 150 on DK. Alec Burks, he's in 76% for me right now on Fanduel. I'm happy with that number. It's nearing that double the field number. Obviously, he's the highest owned dude on the slate on both sites, or close to. I guess Clarkson a little bit more owned, but I'm happier with Burks there. 54% Clarkson. I'm getting to 24% Beal. That's kind of a guy that I'm jamming in and upping his projection just to get a little bit over top of the field. I like the idea of running it back with a lot of those pieces. I'm surprised. I'm only getting to 18% Mitchell. Maybe that's kind of a product of other positions and other places that I can go. Obviously, it's Washington. He is going to be a focal point of what they're going to do today. He's only 8,300. Shea, I'm lighter on now at 14%. He's getting a little bit more ownership than that, so I'm lighter there as well. Joe Ingles is kind of the scary fade that I have going right now at the moment. I know you're probably going to say a gigantic number and make me feel very inadequate about the fact that I have near single-digit numbers of Joe Ingles.
Yeah, I mean, to make you feel inadequate, I don't just have to talk about my exposure to Joe Ingles. But so you're talking about DraftKings there, right? Because Fanduel.
Oh, I was talking Fanduel. Oh, yeah, sorry. Fanduel, I only have I'm way below the field on Fanduel, 12%.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So Joe Ingles is a shooting guard on Fanduel, and he's shooting guard and small forward on DraftKings.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that he's one of the best plays on both sites. I do think on Fanduel, I think the priority should be Jordan Clarkson and Alec Burks, but I have Joe Ingles as my third favorite shooting guard on Fanduel. On DraftKings, he is currently my favorite shooting guard, him and Clarkson. And Frank Ntilikina up there too. And then Chase and Randall also has shooting guard eligibility. All these guys just play every position, it seems like, on DraftKings.
Well, on DraftKings specifically, too, you have Burks and Barrett that are small forward only. You have small forward eligible Joe Ingles. You have small forward. Before you had a bunch of Taylor Horton-Tucker before we got news that Caruso was going to be in. He was popping way up there as well. So we had a bunch of small forwards that were kind of stacked. It has thinned out a little bit now where you can go Burks, Barrett, and mix in Ingles at that position as well. But yeah, over on Fanduel, for me, I get getting to Ingles, but I can't play everybody. I'm playing 50 lineups. I'm trying to figure out if there's a route that I can take where I can get a little bit more Ingles, but then I'm basically sacrificing other plays that I want to be over top of the field on. I don't want to just be playing at the field on a guy like Ingles. I understand he's a phenomenal value, but I like the upside that exists with Clarkson and Burks. Obviously, they're higher owned, but I'm just jamming in well over the field on both and living with the result.
Somebody's saying they can't find Randall on Fanduel. Obviously, talking about Chase and Randall, not Julius Randall. You might be looking at the point guard position because he is a shooting guard at 3,600 on Fanduel. So that is where you want to look. You find him. And it's hard to get to him on Fanduel just because there's other guys that are much higher priority plays. Super chat here from Solid Picks. He wants to know the top stud of the night on Fanduel. So who is the number one guy that you are paying up for on Fanduel, Eric?
Out of the studs, well, it was Vooch, and then that changed. Right now, it's probably Trae Young, if you're going to consider that a guy at 8,800. Otherwise, Russell Westbrook, I'm getting well over the field at too. I've got 33% of him. I'm basically 50% leveraged against the field there. I like that spot for him. Again, we got to run back some of these Utah guys that I like and hoping that game stays remotely competitive. Not that I don't think Clarkson wouldn't stay out on the floor, even if that game got a little wonky. He's done it in the past here, but they are supposed to run him out of the gym in this spot. And gosh, if it does go south, then I'd rather have the whole lineup go south and just kind of like have that be the day. But otherwise, I want to capture all the upside.
It's Julius Randle for me. Just the power forward options are so thin on FanDuel tonight.
It's true too.
And I think that it makes more sense to spend down at other positions. So pretty heavy on Zion, pretty heavy on Julius Randle. It's not even that I think either of them have very favorable price tags. I just think that the way the slate shapes up, it makes a whole lot of sense to pay up at power forward. So
I was going to the lower owned option, I think. Randall's definitely the guy. I mean, right now we have crazy ownership on him. I'm getting to 68%. So that would probably be the correct answer in terms of who is my top overall owned guy. But my favorite tournament guy that I'm probably going to get a little bit more of as we get closer to lock is going to be Westbrook.
All right, so moving over to the small forwards now. We haven't really talked about many guys at this position yet. I think this is a little bit trickier to fill on FanDuel. I think RJ Barrett is a fairly obvious chalk play just because of all the guys that are out for the Knicks. I also think that RJ Barrett makes for a good play on DraftKings. A lot of the guys that are good plays at small forward on DraftKings, guys we've already talked about: Alec Burks, small forward eligibility; Joe Ingles, small forward eligibility on DraftKings. Those are, to me, the two top plays. Then the next guys I have behind them are RJ Barrett and LeBron James. How often do you find yourself paying up for LeBron on FanDuel and DraftKings? Is he a priority for you?
Yes and no. I want to get to about the field. I was having a tough time doing it earlier because I was getting so much RJ Barrett. He was eating up a lot of that ownership. Rui Hachimura is a guy that I have been much, much higher on the field than late. Obviously, if you look at his box scores previous to the last 3 games, it's really, really ugly. But this is kind of a different path that they're taking with him. 38, 37, and 38 minutes. They're giving him a crazy amount of run. We're talking about run backs. I'm not somebody who generally tries to have quote unquote stack a game by any means, but if this game is going to stay close, I like getting to a pivot of a 5K Rui Hachimura who's playing a crazy, a crazy larger allotment of minutes, 18, 18, and 15 shot attempts the last 3 games. Being aggressive, being assertive. If this game were to stay close, I think Rui, Westbrook, Beal, those would be kind of your 3 proponents for why it did. So I'm getting above the field, well above the field on Rui Hachimura in like a scary way. Like 34% Rui is a lot to get to on this slate. Bogdanovich is kind of a product of the fact that there are other Utah guys that we do prioritize, but I'm getting close to the field, not quite there. Mikal Bridges is another guy that I'm just shorting completely here in this spot. I'm way underneath the field at the moment there too. Not somebody I'm ever super excited to play. I know the 4,900 number is an exciting thing to be seeing. There's really no knock. You can say he's projected to play 32 minutes. I don't mind going there, but him, I'm lighter on. I'm lighter a little bit on Bojan. Rui way over the field, Ingram way over the field, and RJ Barrett.
Yeah, and I mean, Barrett, really popular. I think we could tie this into, because we've talked about a bunch of Knicks at this point. We've already brought up Julius Randle, so we've basically talked about all the Knicks at some point that I think are viable plays of this slate. And somebody asked us this in our premium Slack chat, which if you sign up to be a member of Awesemo Plus, you get access to the premium Slack chat, and you can just troll me. You could ask me questions, DM me, just all that important stuff. He was asking about making groups for Knicks guards. To me, I don't think you have to do that just because they are so cheap. But do you have any concerns with playing lineups that have, say, like 4 Knicks on FanDuel, maybe having 4 Knicks or even 5 Knicks or something like that on Draft? 5 is probably a little excessive, but having multiple Knicks players, is there any concern with you just because the total is so low for that game?
Yes, I would say that I wouldn't want to get to 4 still. I think 4 probably, I don't think there's going to be enough possessions in the game to see 4 happen without a lot of defensive counting stats. I'd probably be more inclined to go to FanDuel and play 4, where the pricing isn't nearly as sharp or strict as what it is over on DraftKings. I would say on DraftKings, the most I'd want to get to, if anybody right now, I have only 2 of every team except for Utah and New York. I'm allowing 3. On FanDuel, I would be more inclined. I could probably see a couple lineups getting to 4 here. I don't have any at the moment, but I'm going to be kind of doing a couple hand edits here in the next couple minutes on some of my lineups as they crunch out. And I could see getting to 4 there and running it back and making sure that I do have one other piece on the other side, because you're basically asking that entire game to stay close. I guess with the Knicks, though, they just don't have enough bodies to necessarily get you in a situation where you would be like giving up so much else at that position other than the Utah guys at shooting guard.
Yeah, so here's the other thing too, is so many of those Knicks guys are so cheap that it's hard. Like, I think it's pretty viable to see a bunch of these guys have good games relative to their price. So Frank Ntilikina is 3,000, right? If Frank Ntilikina puts up 20 fantasy points, if Alec Burks puts up 30, and then RJ Barrett, puts up 35 or something like that, like those are all reasonable point totals. It's not like we're trying to get production out of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant all at the same time. Like, you only need a fraction of it because these guys are so cheap. So that's why I don't really have a problem with it on DraftKings for those prices. It's a little harder on FanDuel where the min price is higher though.
Yep, that's a great point.
All right. So any other small forwards that you want to bring up? Anybody that you have exposure to or that you think is a strong play that we have not yet mentioned?
Josh Hart is somebody that I end up over on the field just about every single slate. He's down to 4,700 here now. He randomly spikes in games. He played well in this last Portland matchup there in limited 28 minutes there. I could see that getting extended. He's now gotten a $300 price decrease on Fanduel. I like getting to a little bit of him. I thought I would get to some Gordon Hayward, and I'm really getting to like 0 of him. And I don't know if that's a mistake considering 7,300. It's a guy that I was expecting to get some of, but I have almost none at the moment. Do you have any opinion on him specifically? And Gallo, I had a lot of earlier, and now I'm down to like just about none.
Yeah, I don't have exposure to Gordon Hayward either on either FanDuel or DraftKings. And the reason being is just where he's priced. It doesn't really seem making into lineups for this slate. So 7,300 is kind of on an island. Like there isn't anybody within close to $500 of him. But still, if I have that money, like I have Brandon Ingram project for so many more fantasy points on FanDuel that it just the optimizer is not getting me to Gordon Hayward. And then it's small forward on DraftKings. There's so many good values that have small forward eligibility, right? We have Alec Burks, Joe Ingles, RJ Barrett, LeBron is a pay up option. So with just all those guys in consideration, it's somebody I'm not getting to in Gordon Hayward. So no real issue with not having him in as far as I'm concerned. We do have a super chat here from Corey Randall. It's spelled differently, but just another Randall to consider on this slate. So go roster Corey Randall in addition to Chasen Randall and Julius Randall today. Guys, I'm late and sorry if we talked about it, but would Donovan Mitchell and Ingles be good on DK together with Mike Conley out? Yes, I have multiple lineups, both of them together. I have no issue with it. I think where you maybe start to create issues for yourself is if you're rostering Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, and Jordan Clarkson, all three of them in the same lineup together. To me, that's a little much, but just two of them is absolutely no problem for me.
Agreed. It's not a spot that you need to be that concerned about overlap.
All right. Small forwards, that pretty much wraps that up. Let's get into the power forwards now. To me, Julius Randle, best power forward play on FanDuel, best power forward play on DraftKings. He's really popular. I think it's for good reason. At least on FanDuel, the power forward options kind of stink overall, and he's a little bit too cheap at 9,200 compared to his 10,000 price tag on DraftKings. Getting to him a ton, do you feel any differently, or maybe you're concerned about the ownership?
I'm not. You can always be concerned about ownership when it's above 50% on somebody, but the opportunity's there. He gets the Tibbs bump because the minutes are just the most secure you'll find of just about anybody on the slate. Him and Zion just kind of like sit in their own little tier on power forward. And then you got to kind of get interesting down here at the bottom. So I'm well over the field on both Randall and Zion. I'm actually just a hair. It's hard to get way over top of the field on Randall unless you're locking him. But Zion, Royce O'Neal was somebody that I was getting quite a bit of here earlier. It's kind of tempered down a little bit. You do have to find some savings at other positions. You can't completely jam chalk every single spot. One guy I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, 3,800 Jared Vanderbilt. I know that he didn't play very well against the Lakers, played 19 minutes there. It was kind of a wonky game in general, but we've seen a couple of times where if he gets to those even like early 20s minutes, he played 22 against Portland, put up 36.8. You know, if he even sees like remotely close to those kind of minutes, somebody that can spike in upside. I like the fact that he's over a fantasy point per minute on the entire year. I like the fact that he gives me a different roster construction. Do you have any interest in him whatsoever?
Let's see. What did I end up with? So here's why I don't. I have him in a couple lineups, but nothing significant. Dario Saric, who's also higher owned, but I think he's a much stronger play at 3,800. I would even rather get to Jay Crowder for a similar ownership, also at 3,800. So those are two guys that I project for more fantasy points than Jared Vanderbilt. And then if I'm getting a little bit more expensive, I don't mind Pokusevski at 4,300. Also somebody else who I have as a stronger play than Vanderbilt. So just because there are comparable plays for me in that price range, Dario Saric being a little more popular, but then even more contrarian options like Pokusevski or Jay Crowder, those are guys that I have projected higher than Vanderbilt.
All right, that's fair. For me, it was just simply a product of trying to get different in some places. He's got that 3,800 number. I know Saric right now is garnering some ownership, so I thought that there was possibility a route to go there. Dario Saric has played really, really good, but if you look at him just in terms of their minutes projection, that's really the only thing that's different between him and Vanderbilt, and it's only by a minute and a half. So they're both 1.05 fantasy point per minute on the year over on FanDuel. I don't know. They just seem to be pretty similar to me. So it was strange to see that Vanderbilt was down at 8% and Dario is basically getting almost triple that ownership.
Yeah. So here's where I think if we're talking about Saric, right, I think the better pivot play off him and also serve as leverage is Jay Crowder. Because number one, I said that I have him project for more fantasy points than Vanderbilt anyway. But also, if we think about what are the ways that Dario Saric doesn't have a good game, one of them is just that Jay Crowder ends up playing more of the minutes than him. So that's also something I think makes him make sense as a leverage play.
Okay, I like it.
All right. Any other power forwards to bring up? If not, then we can talk about centers and address the center-related super chat we just got.
I'm just about the field on Robert Covington as well. Obviously, just a great game environment, 6K. Not great having a guy like CJ McCollum come back, but I was willing to play Covington like right around this price tag with McCollum in the lineup earlier this year. So 6K isn't completely getting off of me there. 3-point upside, stocks upside, sure, why not?
All right, so let's move over to the centers. All guys we're going to address, but Joe K, thank you for the super chat. He wants to know thoughts on Harrell, Capella, and Ayton, and then also top 2 on DraftKings. So I don't know if he means top 2 centers or just top 2 overall plays. So centers, the guys that I have the most exposure to are Moses Brown and Julius Randle. Julius Randle with center eligibility on DraftKings. Who are your 2 favorite centers on DraftKings?
We are thinking alike in that one. Moses Brown, I have 62% of over on DraftKings. I absolutely love this spot for him. Somebody that is just kind of getting jammed into lineups. I'm not sure what this Horford situation is going to look like, but I do know that they played some minutes in tandem together. And Moses Brown, if you were to get to 22 is viable, 24 minutes is viable, 26 he's going to probably smash, and 28 you're going to need him. So I like getting to a bunch of Moses Brown. I don't think the opportunity at cost of center is nearly as high as what it's been on pretty much any other slate this year. So yeah, I'm going to him. I wanted to get to Ayton at 6,200, but it's kind of a product of trying to get different a little bit there. So I am below the field on 28.8% there. I'm just going down the line. Rudy Gobert, absolutely in love with against this Washington team. On DraftKings, I'm getting to a ton of them there. Harder reach for me on FanDuel, but on DraftKings specifically, Moses Brown, Gobert, my favorite 2.
All right. And then to address the other part of the super chat, Montrezl Harrell, I'm underweight to field on. Clint Capella, I'm overweight to. And DeAndre Ayton, I'm also overweight to. So Clint Capella, we talked about a little bit at the top of the show because he got rolled in right before we started. And I was overweight to him. You said you liked being overweight to him as well. He came in questionable. He's cheaper than he's been for most of the season. Also a guy who's playing 29 minutes for the season, averaging over 40 fantasy points. So if he's playing full minutes and playing, 30 plus in this pretty solid matchup against the Thunder, I have to expect over 40 fantasy points for Capella. The field does not represent that really right now, which I think is mostly because he carried a questionable tag for most of the day. That's definitely impacting his ownership a little bit. DeAndre Ayton, what did you do with him today? His fantasy production overall for the year has been pretty disappointing, but we're looking at him now at 6,200 on DraftKings. Different play for me on FanDuel versus DraftKings. FanDuel, we have Ayton priced at 6,800. But at only 6,200 where we could roster multiple centers on DK, I think he is one of the best center plays. I'm overweight, even though he is fairly popular at the position. How did you handle Ayton on both sites?
I'm like at the field. I find it hard to be like, I'm super excited to get as much DeAndre Ayton as possible on this slate because Moses Brown, Gobert, and then Capella was the third guy that I have listed here. I've got 24% of him as well. So that's just a little bit over double the field. Yeah, it's more of just a product of what else I'm trying to do. And Ayton, I get it. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it against Minnesota and Cat. This is not formidable by any means. He projects out well for Alex. I just get really, really worried about the minutes. He's only projected right now for 29 minutes. Obviously, if he gets 30 plus, you're probably going to want to be over the field on that because that means that he's outrunning Saric. But I do like the point Adam made on the earlier show too, that Saric does see a little bit of that extended run. Obviously, Saric, you're playing at a power forward spot over on FanDuel. That makes it a little bit more stomached over there as opposed to playing him at 4,500 on this slate over on DraftKings. but I could see those minutes getting chopped into a little bit. I could see blowout run. There's a number of avenues where Ayton doesn't get the run that you would want him to, even at 6,200. So I'm going to take my chances cheaper with Brown, or with more upside, I believe, that exists in Capella and Gobert.
Yeah, and then something else. Let's talk about Moses Brown, because we've brought him up here, and he's been brought up in our Slack chat. He's been brought up in the YouTube chat a bunch of times today. So I do not expect him to start at center today. We have Al Horford back. Al Horford's rested in recent games. That has led to Moses Brown starting. Last game Moses Brown started, he played a decent amount of minutes and scored. I think it was 99 fantasy points, if I remember correctly. Just he scored all the points. He got all the rebounds. He did everything for them. The key point here to me, though, is Darius Bazley's still out, so there is still a little bit of a void to fill in the front court. And he is such a good points per minute fantasy producer. He's going 1.34 DraftKings points per minute. We have a very small sample size on Brown so far this year, but he's playing still. If I give him 20 minutes, he comes out as a good play on Fanduel and DraftKings. And the only way to make him not a good play is, I think, if you think he plays like 16 minutes, because giving his points per minute production, if you say he's going to play over 20 minutes, then that means you're expecting him to score around 30 fantasy points at his current production. So I'm overweight to Moses Brown. I think he's one of the better center options. I think if you're going cheap at center, Brown is the guy to go to. He's not nearly as popular on this slate as he was last slate. So how do you feel about Moses Brown for today?
Yeah, in love. I say, yeah, he's my highest owned dude at the center position. 64% that I'm getting to on this last run. I'm plugging in my lineups now. There's not a single thing that I could knock on it. Like, he might just be really, really good at basketball. Like, I really liked seeing his profile here earlier. Young guy that's starting to get minutes, starting to see those minutes extended. Sure, Al Horford resting the last 2 days, obvious helper. But even in the low 20 minutes range, I think that he's a great value still at 4,300 on DraftKings. FanDuel, there is the opportunity cost of only having one center. So I am just above the field there, but on DraftKings, I am well over top, because if those minutes were to somehow get to 26, 28, if he plays a little bit more alongside Horford, which we have seen even in those first two games where he started to get into the rotation, yeah, he's a smash.
All right, we've got a super chat here from Darius Mills, top power forward center options for single entry relative to ownership. So I assume that's a DraftKings question, because he said power forward / center. If that is incorrect, then you could update me on that and say it was actually for FanDuel. But for DraftKings, I think the best big men options relative to ownership, the guys that I'm most overweight on, are Clint Capella and Moses Brown, who we just talked about. How about for you?
Moses Brown by a lot. And then for single entry purposes, I mean, yeah, Julius Randle is garnering ownership, but I'll go Zion over on DK, kind of mix it up, give you a different roster construction and a build there. Just super high on him in general. 8,900. I know it's going to seem crazy, but I really, really like him in this spot again today.
All right, 5 minutes left until lock. I've not yet hawked for likes on the show. I don't do it sometimes. I come out here, I just want to talk about the basketball. I want to help win everybody some money. So I forget to ask for likes sometimes. Do us a favor, like the video. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even more important, because then you know whenever we're going live, whenever Eric and I are about to do a show together, or whatever other shows we have coming up on the channel. So today we still have MMA, the MMA strategy show. We also have the NBA late slate live before lock. So stick around for those, and you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, then you will know when those shows go live. And like those ones also, when you pop in, I'm going to, in advance, ask for likes on those. I'm not doing them, except who knows, maybe somebody like me will be hosting the show and forget to ask for them. Oh, by the way, Darius Mills was asking power forward and center on FanDuel. All right. So at power forward for me, even though he's really popular, it's still Julius Randle for me at power forward on FanDuel. I think he's impossible to stay away from. Zion, I also think, is a good chalk play. Who is your favorite contrarian power forward option on FanDuel, Eric? Just to recap that for our friend Darius here.
Yeah, Jared Vanderbilt is my sick play of the day. 3,800, a little bit cheaper, getting off of a little bit cheaper. Profiles very, very similarly to Sarge. They're right around the same fantasy point per minute on the entire year. Obviously, I think that's skewed a little bit with the fact that Vanderbilt had a lot of those minutes with Cat off the floor earlier and was seeing some of those minutes extended there in his absence. Since Cat's gotten back, that's taken a little bit of a dip. but I still think that he's going to profile close to a fantasy point per minute guy going forward. If he sees any kind of a boost to those minutes to the low 20s, I think there's a chance he outperforms Saric for a little bit cheaper.
All right, so now talking about overall some of our favorite center options on FanDuel. For me, for the ownership, I think Clint Capella is the overall best center option as a contrarian play. Only 7% projected ownership on FanDuel. I think if you're going cheap, Moses Brown also makes a whole lot of sense. So those are my two favorite overall center options on DraftKings. If you're going a little bit chalkier, I think Enes Kanter makes a bunch of sense at 6,000. So who are some of your favorite center plays on FanDuel?
Somebody just kept writing Kuzma. Oh man, I don't think I can do that. Not on this slate. On center, yeah, I love getting to Moses Brown. As I said before, I'm over the field still quite a bit on FanDuel there. He's got a lot lower a lot lower ownership there. Clint Capella, love that spot as well. Vooch I was getting to a ton of earlier, but now it's becoming Gobert, Kanter, some of these other guys. I am kind of surprised. Obviously, this is a good spot for Kanter, but I am surprised that he is getting substantially more ownership. Now that you do have McCollum back there too, we talked about how it affects Lillard. Obviously, this is going to affect Kanter in some ways too, just in terms of usage, in terms of opportunities to just be scoring the ball flat out. So yeah, we're getting a cheaper number there, sitting at 6K. He's continually started to come down. So maybe the price is right, and that's why he's the highest owned center, but I'm below the field there as well, getting to a little bit more of some of these other pieces.
All right, we are almost done with Live Before Lock, but that does not mean that Eric and I are going away. We're going to be sticking around for 30 minutes, talk about the Jock Market. We'll be reacting to whatever happens in the first game of the slate, which probably isn't going to start until like 7:20 anyway, because NBA games never start on time. Why would they? But Eric and I will be talking about the Jock Market, and there's also going to be a giveaway, so stick around for that. If you make a deposit on Jock Market, use the promo code Awesemo20. You'll get a $20 deposit match. Download the app Jock Market first, and then you can make that deposit, use the promo code Awesemo20, get a $20 deposit match. And then once you've done that, you'll be eligible for up to $100 giveaway we're going to be doing via some trivia questions coming up starting in 2 minutes after we get to lock. So that is all the reason to stick around. Another thing, too, is even if you're unsure about whether you're going to be playing Jock Market or not, listen to us talk about it, because other things could happen on the slate. Players could get scratched. We could have an unexpected starting lineup, and Eric and I will also be covering all of that over the next 30 minutes. So stick around, listen to the show, do not go anywhere. And then also don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Final thoughts on the slate, Eric. We've got 1 minute left. Who is most likely to ruin your night?
Oh God, on DraftKings, that's easily Chesson Randle, Frank Ntilikina. Like not even remotely close. Those are the two. On FanDuel, if Zion doesn't play well, that would be pretty awful. But I'd say the guy that's the highest owned for me and the highest owned on the slate is Alec Burks. If he plays poorly, just close the laptop, Eric.
All right. We are approaching the lock right now. Who is most likely to ruin the slate for me? Damian Lillard, somebody who he didn't ruin the slate for me the other day because I still ended up being profitable, except I was not on Damian Lillard at all. And then I was very high on LeBron James. Luckily, LeBron ended up putting up a triple-double and had a pretty solid game. But I would prefer that Damian Lillard does not do what he did again the other day, because that would absolutely kill me.
We are in the same boat again. Yeah, I think we were both on that fade when we were doing tip-off. And yeah, I'm going to continue to hope CJ McCollum cuts into it. Not that I want to play CJ McCollum. He's completely priced out of this slate. Also, I misspoke. I guess Saric, Crowder, and Vanderbilt are all the same price, but I'm going to take the lowest owned of the three.
All right, one final super chat here. I'm going to butcher this name. Takiace James. I'm sorry, I definitely did not get your name right, but last minute question on DK: Bullock, Tucker, or Bridges to fill the 4,600 forward spot? And would you go to Ntilikina or Chesson Randle? Yes, I like Ntilikina and Randle. As for Bullock, Tucker, or Bridges, I think that Bullock is the best option of those three. What say you before we jump into the Jock Market?
Yeah, there's going to be more opportunity in minutes, and Bullock can just randomly run into some fantasy points, whereas Bridges, you're actually paying a little bit more for it.
All right, it is time for the Jock Market segment. Jordan, do we have the bell? All right, it is game on. Guys, today's show is sponsored by Jock Market, and like I was saying before, Jock Market, it's a different spin on daily fantasy sports. we're bidding on players as if they are stocks, and something Eric and I are going to be talking about right now. We're going to be bidding on the IPO price. If you win the bid, then you're going to get exposure to that player. You get a certain number of shares based on how many you attempt to bid on, and if you win the bid. And then the other thing also is that you're going to get paid out based on how high these individual players score for the night. So it's going to be their individual fantasy points. And if somebody ends up with the top overall score for the night, I'm going to bring it up right now. I think it's $25 per share that it returns. Do you that off the top?
That's correct. Yeah, $25. I know. Yeah.
So let's say that Julius Randle, who right now is projected to be the number 1 overall play on the Jock Market, let's say right now he's at $10. If you were to win 3 shares of Julius Randle at $10, that means you'd be paying $30 and you'd be getting back $75 if he is the top overall scorer on the slate. So let's start right there. Julius Randle, are you surprised to see that he is the number 1 projected play on the Jock Market?
Yes and no. Part of it is just the raw minutes that are kind of expected out of him. Also, one thing that's different playing over at Jock Market, you're getting minus 0.5 for every missed shot attempt. There is some risk that you're taking playing a guy like Damian Lillard or Russell Westbrook, who could have a bad shooting night. Julius Randle's getting a lot of scoring all over the place. So I think that security that exists with Randle, where you're not going to see a lot of big negative games out of him. I think the security is awfully built in for Randle there.
We've got one more super chat that I want to address really quick. Super chat's pouring in today, guys. Thank you very much. Kyle Frank and Shea, or CP3 and Burks. That is CP3 and Burks for me.
Yeah, it would probably be for me too. Shea's kind of the guy who stands out that I'm just not as high on the field today.
Yeah, and let's see. Did we get we just got a Knicks starting lineup, by the way. The news just keeps coming. Knicks starting lineup: Frank Ntilikina, Alec Burks, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Nerlens Noel. So relief that we get to see Alec Burks in the starting lineup. That was expected, except I would have been panicking a little bit had Alec Burks not been starting. So it's always good to hit on the starting lineups.
And we got Terrence Ross out, so I don't have to change anything, which is awfully nice.
All right, so Terrence Ross out. What are the implications of that for you? And then we'll tie it into the Jock Market and look at some of the prices of the guys that we think benefit.
So I'm curious what you think about getting to any kind of Evan Fournier whatsoever on this slate. I'm just worried about the minutes and the opportunity cost of small forward on both sites. RJ Barrett, obviously, the standout guy over at small forward, but it does get a little bit hairier over there than it would over on DraftKings, where I think it's much easier to just plug and play Burks just about everywhere, and then you don't have to worry about the rest of the position. But would you get to any of Evan Fournier, 6,400 whatsoever, if you were to see, 28 minutes out of him, 30 minutes, would you take some shots there?
No, because of the expected pace of play. So we have, let's see, what's the latest total for that game? It was very, very low earlier. And let me also bring this in. What is the current bid on Evan Fournier? Just so I could tie it in here. Well, the asking price on Evan Fournier right now is $1. So yeah, if I could get Evan Fournier for free, then yes. And you know what? I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to place a bid on Evan Fournier right now.
I'm going to outbid you. Here we go.
All right. Well, also don't forget Jock Market IPO price projections. They are free on Awesemo.com. And Evan Fournier, let's see, we have Alex has Evan Fournier projected for a fair IPO price of $3.20. So $1 would certainly be a bargain. I'm going to bid more than the $1, and I'm probably going to get outbid on him, especially because I've just thrown it out to ether. Guys, come at me. Come bid it. Come bid against me on Evan Fournier.
You instigator.
Let's see if I'm winning. You're going to outbid me, aren't you? I did that to you last show.
You did. You just outbid me. There it was. I beat you to the draw, and then coming back at me. Let's take a look at some of these other guys. What's Moses Brown's Jock Market number? Because again, this is a guy that if you see any kind of a minutes jump, I'm assuming he'll come in, not a minutes jump from what he's had the last 2 games, but above 22, 24 minutes for him. There's some crazy upside right now. Break even. So $4 is the fair IPO price on him right now. 36th ranked. I'm going to put in a bid there for sure. I'm going to go 5 shares at 250 and see what happens there. Love that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get him there, that would certainly be a steal. And obviously, there's massive upside in Moses Brown because we've seen it, right? Mm-hmm. Like just a game ago, he scored. Let's see, how many points did he score on
50 plus? I know on DK.
I'm looking on. It ended up being 46 Jock Market points. So something else that's different about Jock Market is that there are negative points for missed shots. And Moses Brown, not that he's missing very many shots because he's taking all the shots at the rim, but that's the only reason he was below 50 on Jock Market. But if we are going to get, somewhere in the neighborhood of, like I said before, if we get 20 plus minutes of Moses Brown, he's going to have a good value game. Just the question becomes, with Al Horford in, how much does that limit Moses Brown? And does Moses Brown remain the backup center? Do they go to Isaiah Roby more? I do think there's a little bit of variance there, but as long as he gets the minutes, I think he should be good. How confident are you in that playing time being there for him?
I'm confident in kind of a baseline of 22 to 24 minutes, kind of right there, with upside for more. He's going to play alongside Horford, so I like that. Also, guys, take a look at the chat. We have some free money that's coming up for grabs right now. This is a great opportunity to jump in to kind of like get yourself onto Jock Market, some free money to be had by answering some trivia. So get yourself some answers in there too. Again, free 99, the best price for anything in the world.
All right. And yeah, we've got some of those trivia questions. Firing out each question, you could earn 20 Jock Market dollars. They're up for grabs. This is definitely Joey Corman questions because they're related to college basketball mascots. So I know his games. I know his interests. So this is definitely his doing. Some of those ones are going. Also, we've got March Madness coming up tomorrow. And I'm pretty sure we had who did it? Somebody did a pre-recorded basketball show. I think it was maybe Matt Rasa.
They did a live show yesterday. They did Ben Rasa and Matt Kachevsky did a live show where they picked the brackets, and it was fantastic. Got to go figure out that my Illinois ticket that I bought 2.5 months ago. Thanks, Mo Charania, my buddy, who went to Illinois. He's a huge Illini guy. He was like, you want to be invested on this team early and often. I wish I had bought it 4 months ago, but even 2 months ago, I got some pretty good value on that.
All right. And we have somebody in here was asking, how do you see ownership? There's no ownership to see for Jock Market, but if you want to see what the fair projected IPO pricing is for the Jock Market, then you just go to awesemo.com and they're free. Alex's projections here, how many fantasy points he projects for each player, and then what that converts to in terms of a fair IPO price. So talking about some of these individual players, Moses Brown, somebody who we just talked about, we're bidding on. Alex has the fair IPO price projected, something that Eric brought up before, at $4. So at $4 right now, he is currently, he's currently bid up to $3. Mm-hmm. So that still indicates that there's a little bit of value on Moses Brown. Let's talk about the high end options here. We talked about Julius Randle being the guy who's projected for the most fantasy points. The guy projected for the second most fantasy points, and somebody who I think if you just look at the slate and the names, certainly before the season, would have thought LeBron James would be the highest projected guy on the slate. Not the case on Jock Market, not the case on Alex's projections. LeBron projected for a fair IPO price of $15.20, currently going at $9.75. Is he somebody that you are thinking about getting in on, Eric?
Yeah, I probably could. I mean, everything is dictated upon the price here. Like the key is to make sure that you can try to find some way to get underneath some of these fair IPOs. So if that price maintains where it's at right now, some of these top tier guys have gone a little bit under. And we saw that, I believe last week we did Giannis, Jokic. You had both of them on the slate. Both went for underneath the fair IPO price. Had I been able to fire a little bit more, I in hindsight definitely should have. So you can get some value from some of those top tier guys. I have no problem getting to a little LeBron.
All right. Has the first game tipped off yet? It's no way. It's only 10 minutes after it's supposed to start.
Unbelievable.
There's no way it would start at that point. All right, let's scroll down the names here. What are some of the players that stand out to you that are not being bid on for nearly as much money as you think they should?
Right now, there are a couple guys that, like a guy like Steven Adams is right now $1.26. I could see getting over top of that. You're talking about a starting center going up against Cantor. The minutes have come down a little bit, but he's worth more than that to me. Man, Aaron Gordon's getting bid up pretty quickly too. That's not great. Don't really want to go there. If I'm going to back up my Jared Vanderbilt take, he's right now at $1.01. So that seems like a good price to get in on if I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is. So I'll put a bid on there. His whole break even of 59th place or better. Why not take a couple shots on your guy that you're advocating out in the streets for? So we'll put in a low bid there, see if I can't get a couple shares, and that'll make it a fun sweat for sure. But otherwise, looking down here, it's fun because it's happening in real time where everything's getting updated. I just got outbid for Moses Brown. You guys are the worst. I hate you all.
That was me.
Let's see. That was you just now?
Yeah, that was me.
Gosh. Again, that's how quick it's going. That's great. Going through here, a couple of the other guys, maybe Eric Bledsoe at $1.30. That seems a little low to me. I don't like Lou Dort in a lot of ways on a lot of slates. I don't have a lot in DFS today, but $1.77, I could see him getting on top of that. He's going to get some extended run here, possibly. Gosh, there's a number of spots that I want to go. It's going to be a very, very good sweat as we're getting the next 15 minutes going here. We'll have some more clarity on where some of those studs are going for up top, but I don't want to lock in too much of this lower tier value and get too thin by like getting 10 shares of Jared Vanderbilt.
You briefly mentioned Aaron Gordon before, and what was he being bid at?
He changed the picture to Aaron Gordon. Did you just do that, Jordan or Joey? Has he always had the Aaron Gordon picture on YouTube?
I have no clue.
Okay, just noticing that.
Maybe not. Who knows? The world's greatest scientists will get on that and try to figure out the answer, but who's to say? But we're talking about Aaron Gordon right here anyway, so it ties in nicely. Right now being bid up to 255. What are your expectations for Aaron Gordon on this slate?
Not high in a lot of ways. You're not getting any kind of a discount going to him. I think there's just so much more security that exists going these other directions. I don't know. He's just kind of there in a lot of ways. I don't really want to play him anywhere. 6,600, garnering absolutely zero ownership, though, letting that be known. And I think rightfully so over on Draftkings, over on Fanduel, just not even like remotely in play for me still. But on Jock Market, this would be kind of the place where you could possibly get a little bit of exposure to him. I don't want to say expose myself to this because apparently that was like the buzzword that I said last time. I want to expose myself to Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, no. Before you said you wanted to get over the top of somebody, that was your phrasing before, if I remember correctly.
There's room for improvement here.
Here's the issue I have with Aaron Gordon, be it on the Jock Market, be it on DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever else you play DFS. I don't see the upside with somebody who I think is likely to play really limited minutes. He played 14 minutes in his first game back after the All-Star break. That was his first game since January, and he only ended up playing 14 minutes against the Heat. He's definitely going to play more than that today, but I don't know how much more, right? Like, I don't think he's going to go from 14 minutes to 30 minutes. They held him out for 2 games for rest. He played 14 minutes, first time he played basketball in 2 months. They go, hey, we can't let this guy play for another week. So I can't believe that all of a sudden now they're just going to let him go to a full workload. So Aaron Gordon, I get that we have guys out for them, but even so, there's other places I'd rather go. Also, Aaron Gordon right now bid up to 262, and Alex has 230 as the fair IPO price projection for him. So to me, the value's already gone in Aaron Gordon.
Agreed. Yeah, that I was pointing him out because it was shocking how much he was going for in that spot.
All right, I'm gonna scroll through the Jock Market and see who are some of the other guys who stand out here. So it's interesting. Before we were talking about both of us, kind of bearish on Damian Lillard, right? Hey, we could use some stock terms around here. Yeah, we were bearish on Damian Lillard. He's getting bid at a higher price than both LeBron James and Julius Randle right now. I don't agree with that.
I'm right there with you. I just can't do it. And again, New Orleans Pelicans, one thing that I was giving Adam and Luffy a shout out. I'll give a shout out to our boy Chris Baggs as well. He was talking about, or it was Ben Rassa, excuse me, not Chris Baggs. We won't give him any credit. But Ben Rassa was talking about how the New Orleans Pelicans give up 42% shooting to the three-pointer in general. So this is just like a smash spot for Damian Lillard, and I should have noticed that last time. I don't care. CJ McCollum's back, 28% usage, added back into the mix. Already played 26 minutes. That makes me elevate him to about 28 minutes this time out. No thanks for Damian Lillard being more expensive than Randle and James.
Yeah, that is how I feel also. And the current bidding for these guys, Julius Randle, refreshing out. Julius Randle, LeBron James, actually at the same price, both at 11. I've been outbid on Moses Brown. We're gonna have to rectify that situation. But Julius Randle and LeBron James both bid up to 11.15, and Damian Lillard at 12.88. So Dame quite a bit higher than those guys right now. Well, now Julius Randle up to 11.48. Still a number that, per Alex's projections, that there is a good amount of value to, because Randle, fair IPO price projection at 16.40, and right now at 11.48, you would only need him to be the 8th best scorer on the slate or better. So I'm actually going to throw a bid on Julius Randle here.
This is the worst, is that now I have like two guys that I absolutely want to get, but I also don't want everybody else to be able to join in on the party right now, because unlike DFS, where I do kind of want everybody to smash, like in this specifically, this directly affects whether or not I get shares. If I say this guy's name, who's just going way, way, way under the market price, I'm just screwed. But I'm going to say it because we are here supporting Jock Market. We want everybody to be able to have some fun being able to jump over on the app. It's a lot of fun, but Al Horford's going for too cheap right now. I just bid a bunch on him. Kind of like in the middle of this tier. He's the one guy who's kind of going beneath the cracks. I think there is some uncertainty that exists there, so people probably are shying away. But for him to be lower, right now we have a break-even price of $4.70 for him, for the fair IPO price, excuse me. I believe, yeah, $4.70. He's going for $3.29, kind of like a great spot to be looking at going for right now, $3.29. That's just too low for a guy that I do expect to be playing enough to be viable on the Jock Market. Maybe not necessarily up, and I got outbid all of my shares as I was saying that. See how that works? That's fun.
And it's gone. And it's gone.
I had 10 shares and now I have 0. This is something. Nope, there he is, $4. There it is.
So man, the high DFS score so far through nearly 5 minutes. Yeah, Joe Ingles has 6 points in the steal. Eric, who came out and was like, hey, I like everybody. I like these other Jazz guys, but Joe Ingles, I'm not so sure about that fella. Joe Ingles off to a quick start, but who knows? That might be all the fantasy points he scores for the rest of the night, because as I like to tell people, points scored in the first quarter, they matter just as much as the ones in the fourth quarter. The game doesn't end 4 minutes in, although some people would like you to think that it does. Something else that I think is worth mentioning about the Jock Market is you could also buy and sell shares of players after the games have started. So we have 11 minutes until the IPO bidding closes. But as the slate goes on, you could buy and sell players. And something we see a lot in DFS, maybe this sounds familiar to you, people might overreact occasionally to a quick or slow start from player. Just as you heard right there that Joe Ingles was already up to 6 points, you threw your phone down in frustration.
Well, I'm dramatic. Like,
yeah,
I feel like people are here to watch me tilt a little bit. Like, I feel like after the Paul George deal, there's a tiny bit of, like, if everybody's being completely honest, they kind of want to see me cry a little bit. I feel that. I feel that energy.
I mean, I think crying because Joe Ingles scored 6 points in the first quarter might be a little bit of an overreaction, but yeah, I do think there's a little bit of that element.
9 on FanDuel.
Well, I meant 6 real life points.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I think that's also something, those emotions, we can take advantage of them on the Jock Market, because once the game starts, it's not like the players lock, you still buy and sell players. And something I always think about in terms of strategy is one of the first shows, I want to say it was the second or third show that Josh and I ever did for the Jock Market. Christian Wood scored 0 fantasy points in the first quarter. And just the YouTube chat, Slack chat, everything was filled with, oh my God, did Christian Wood die? Is he hurt? How come Christian Wood isn't playing? He just wasn't playing well to start the game. And by the end of the second quarter, Christian Wood was the highest scoring player on the slate. So that's one of those things where when you start to see people who just panic sell players, like, oh my God, I bought Christian Wood at $9 a share and he's going to have the worst game in the history of basketball tonight because he hasn't scored any fantasy points in 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden people are trying to sell off Christian Wood for a cheap price. That's something that I think is really interesting, and you should try to buy low on some of the players. If you're in a DFS Slack chat and you start to see everybody saying, oh my God, this guy sucks, this guy's dead, chances are they're being undervalued.
Agreed. Yeah, I there's no way around it. Like, capitalizing, the one thing I have tried to do constantly when it comes to sports betting, when it comes to everything else, just taking the emotion out of it as much as I possibly can. Like, before I would have freaked out. I've had, yesterday I broke even and I was ecstatic in DFS for that, considering how badly I got beaten the first 3 days of this week. But that's kind of the way that it goes. You're going to lose more times than you're going to win. The key is to be able to capitalize on the days that you do win in DFS, unless you're playing cash games, in which case you better be winning at that 55% clip.
So by the way, our friend Brad Levine in YouTube chat, he did at you and say, Eric, he will be honest. You are elite industry leading tilter.
Wow. I mean, I'm honored.
You got to be known for something.
Well, yeah, I found my calling. See, Mom and Dad, I told you.
Eric's going to start reading off that Oscar winning award speech that he wrote when he was 11 years old and he's been sleeping with next to his bed for the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's a definite no. Every time I think of Oscar speeches, it just like makes me cringe a little bit more. Like, yeah, it would be really cool and exciting to be able to win one, and it would be awesome. But like most of them of late, I don't know, the Matthew McConaughey one just sticks out in my brain where I'm like, yeah, that's not my cup of tea. Russell Westbrook, I love you. My guy, 18.8. Oh, 18.8%, 18.8 Fanduel points right now. Man, it feels good.
Eric's life is complete now. Look at that.
He's not tilting. What am I? Can I not be an industry leader reverse tilter when can I party? Can I feel good about myself right now?
Whew. Never. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see you do. The players should actually orchestrate their performances to play poorly when they know you're on camera, because I mean, come on, for the entertainment.
You're the one who has all the ins in the industry. You're the one pulling the strings. Let's remember that.
All right. And also Brett Levine, he's very excited in the YouTube chat that he made sure that you were made aware of that comment. So, all right, let's see where the latest bids are. Are you winning any bids on players?
No, because now Moses Brown is like way up to $4 here. I just lost all of those. I think I'm still getting my Al Horford. Nope, Al Horford's gone. That happened while I was talking on that little soliloquy we walked down. Man, I'm gonna have to get down. Oh, I even just lost my Vanderbilt shares. Things are not looking great. Frank even 189. All right, we're gonna look up at these top guys. Julius Randle is still going underrepresented at $12.96. I'm going to fire in 3 shares up there, and I'm going to go closer to that 16 number. We'll go 14 and change. I'm not going to say what the change is in case. We'll see.
By the way, I am winning a bid currently on Julius Randle. That is the one player I'm holding shares of, and I'm scanning the prices. I'm looking for somebody else to potentially bid on. At the top end, I still think there's value on Julius Randle. We have projected for a fair IPO price of $16.40. So I think there's value on LeBron James, who we have projected as a fair IPO price of $15.20. So those are guys that I both think that I should be getting on if you're looking for somebody to bid on. Let's see who else looks like they're coming out a little bit too low. Clint Capella has been bid up pretty aggressively here. LaMelo Ball, $7. Let's see. What does Eric? You don't do anything. What does Alex have as a fair projection here? He has.
It's very hurtful.
I mean, I call it honest, but whatever. It is what it is. Potato, tomato, right? LaMelo Ball projected for a fair IPO price of $6. Currently bid at $7. I think he's one of the more overbid on players right now, which I would expect is probably going to be the case more often than not on a lot of LaMelo Ball slates. Also, just think about what his price is right now on FanDuel and DraftKings as a point of comparison. Like, he started by being way too cheap for a little while. Remember when he first got moved into the starting lineup, he was a chalk play like every slate. When's the last time you had a significant amount of exposure to LaMelo Ball?
It's been a while. It's crazy kind of. Yeah, it's been a while. And what's strange too is Devontae Graham. We didn't even talk about him. Look at his price on both sites. I mean, how far has that guy fallen off in the universe? Like 4,200 on both, and we didn't even say his name today. Like, that's such a weird place to be at. But it's just kind of the result of what it is. And he cuts into enough of the value of Rozier and LaMelo to make them non-viable. And he's just awful as of late anyway himself. So now I've just talked him into knocking down 5 threes in 20 minutes today.
Well, Alex has his fair IPO price projected at $1, and he's being bid all the way up to $280 right now. So somebody likes Devontae Graham more than we do. Here's the issue with Devontae Graham. He's come back and I'm going to look up what this injury was because I, for whatever reason, enjoy saying it. So he missed about a month with knee patellofemoral discomfort. And ever since coming back, his minutes, 18, 17, 22, 17. I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't rest today. Just considering his minutes have been so low, they've been so cautious with him. When I was first looking at the minutes today, I just wrote down Devontae Graham. I was like, all right, he's going to be rested tonight. I didn't think he was going to play. He did end up being in the lineup, but still the minutes have been so limited for him. And the playing time just hasn't been there to the point that now on the tail end of back-to-back, like I don't expect him to reach 20 minutes. Do you?
No, I do not. It's been pretty brutal. It's been hard to watch because he's a guy that I do like. Just from a basketball playing perspective, he's been enjoyable to watch. Thought Charlotte kind of found themselves a guy that fell a little bit through the cracks, but no, he's not viable. He's not playable. And for sure on Jock Market, that's a definite no.
All right. Placing a bid in now. I'm trying to get some shares of Trae Young. His current IPO price is bid at $9.50. That looked a little bit too low for me. I'm on Trae Young tonight for DFS. I'm higher on Trae Young than basically everybody else in the industry. So I'm going to try to get in on him on the Jock Market as well. Hopefully I'll win some shares of him. We're fairly close to closing, right? We've got about 2 minutes to go until the bidding ends. So anybody who wants to get exposure to anybody on the Jock Market, go ahead. Now is your chance. Come out, bid me maybe on Trae Young. Maybe there's somebody else that tickles your fancy. Eric, you usually have a couple players that tickle your fancy. Where are you at now? Is there anybody you were able to get some last minute bids on here?
Come again, sir? Okay. Yeah, I think I've talked Jared Vanderbilt into being a thing. He's now 232, so that's a pass. I'm going to probably get a little bit of Kevin Huerter as well. 355. What's his break-even price at the moment? That feels a little bit low for me. Where is Kevin at?
$2 was his fair price.
Oh,
by the way,
that's a no. Oh.
The Jock Market is closed. The IPO period has finished.
Then I'm going to get 5 shares of Trae Young.
Oh, did you? I got shares of Trae Young also.
Oh, you and I, ride or die. That's what this is. No, it's not what this is, but it's fantastic. These are fantastic things. I got 5 shares.
I have 3 shares at, I believe at 960, I think it was. I
got 980. Yeah, you got a better number than me. I paid 980. Maybe it came in at 960 when it finished, but it 960 is what I ended up getting it for. Same thing.
All right. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that would mean that we need, just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure we need Trae Young to finish 11th or higher to return a profit on that investment. And let's see, where does Alex have him projected? He has Randall higher, LeBron higher, Lillard higher, Vucevic higher, Towns higher. So Trae Young, he is 6th. He had as the fair IPO price $10.80. So look at us. Oh, I believe you. You don't have to show. I'm taking your word for it. I don't think you're lying about your Trae Young exposure.
I know. I'm just excited about it that we got in. We got a good deal. I think I was maybe going a little bit thinner, but I think looking back at it last week, there were a number of opportunities we had where some of these top guys just went a little bit cheaper than they should have. Oh, this feels nice. I've got it in good on Jock Market tonight. I am bullish on our prospects.
There we go. And you know what? I was going to say I was bearish on our relationship, but look at us holding hands with Trae Young. So things are looking up. Hopefully it's a bull market tonight. Jock Market, the stock market, the Top Shot market, the NFT market, everything to the moon. Guys, that's going to wrap up the show for us today. Thank you very much, everybody who stuck around and watched for the entire time on the way out. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We still have the MMA strategy show coming up. There's NBA Live Before Lock coming up. So definitely stick around, watch those later in the day. Until then, everybody, have a good night.